Blog Talk Radio.
Dedicate our life to this sport. We do thousands of sit-ups in camp. We run hundreds of miles, for the ones that take it serious. And we just dedicate ourselves fully to our craft, man. We watch tape. We have attitude. We're rooting, and we go into that fight to land on the line.
Hey, what up, boxing fans? This is the Rope-A-Dope Radio Podcast. I am your host, Chris Carlson. Man, do we have a lot to talk about. Hope everybody's doing okay. The weather's really strange, man. Thoughts and prayers and just thinking about what happened with those tornadoes, in a lot of different places, but especially Kentucky. And I bring that up in general just because, up in Minnesota, up here, up north, it's like randomly like 55 degrees, and we have tornado warnings as well. Not trying to put the case in not trying to make a big deal about it as far as woe is me or anything like that, but that shit was devastating, man. No doubt about it. But, it's crazy, crazy weather. Really crazy. It got to 57 a day, and it literally snowed about 12 inches on, last Friday? Crazy. Anyway, enough about that type of stuff. Wow. Like I said, we got a lot to talk about. It's just, I've said it for a couple of years now. There's times where there's just too much boxing. I'm a hardcore boxing fan. I'm not the hardcore of the hardcore, the most hardest of them all. I'm not this in-depth, the best boxing historian of all time. I know everything, nothing like that. But I followed the sport for quite some time, right? And I'm telling you, dude, this shit, it's just so much of it. And like I said, for a boxing fan, in some ways I really love it, but it's just so much. And, it can be kind of spread out nicely. And that's kind of how it went on Saturday. You know what I mean? It really did. Luckily, we had, the UK fights and all that kind of wrap up early and whatnot, and the ESPN and Showtime fights blended together, but there was time to catch both in a sense anyway. But this weekend coming up, it's just so much of it, dude. You know what I mean? Like I said, I'm not complaining. But we've said that from time to time, there's a lot going on. And just reading through the schedule, it's crazy. It literally is crazy. There's so many fights this coming weekend, Friday and Saturday. Like I said, there's just probably too much. But, you do kind of get this at the end of the year, too. A lot of fighters getting out. There's not a ton of important fights. But there still is some competitive fights on paper that we definitely will preview and predict. I will be live at the Armory this Saturday. I won't be there Friday. That'll be kind of weird. Saturday, I'll be there covering the fights on Fox. David Morrell Jr. Is fighting Fox. We've got a couple other kind of interesting prospect level type stuff. So I think it's a decent card. I really do. The FS1 card is really good. So it's kind of what Fox has been, a prospect contender type stuff. Some of it on paper, not so good. Some of it's actually turned out better than we thought. So, but yeah, I mean, there's so much. Peter Biev in Brown fighting on ESPN Plus on Friday. Madrimov and Michael Soro. I'm looking, I think it's Michelle Soro. I'm looking forward to that one. That's on Friday as well on DAZN. Joseph Parker and Derek Chisora on DAZN. I mean, the list goes. Gilberto Ramirez is fighting Gonzalez on DAZN. Jake Paul, Tyron Woodley Part 2. That's on paper. Like, there's just so much of it, dude. Like I said, for a boxing fan, hey, I'm not overly complaining, but it's weird, man, because sometimes, I don't know. It's kind of like there has to be kind of an in-between. There's got to be some sort of in-between. And I realize venues aren't wide open for boxing. So you got to take what you can get, and you're going to go head-to-head. I mean, the amount of cards that are in the contracts for ESPN, for PBC, for Showtime, and Fox, and then DAZN's cards, clearly they're going to go head-to-head. There's just no stopping that. Maybe in the spring and the summer, it'd be cool if we could get some more maybe Thursday night cards or something like that, especially in the summer. But it's crazy. Like I said, as a boxing fan, it's awesome, but you just look and you go, a lot of this stuff is just going to get lost in the sauce. You know what I mean? But Lomachenko, Nonito Donaire, Bivol, Connor Benn, Katie Taylor, just some of the names that fought this last weekend. So we will start with preview, and then we'll go through start with recap. Here I am. And then we'll preview and predict a handful of these fights. We're not going to break down all 17 fights to go through, but there are some kind of fights that, maybe the main event will be just okay, but an undercard fight's pretty damn good, that type of thing. So we'll be previewing that. And then, of course, we'll talk about some current fight news. We are starting to see the January and February schedule fill up a bit. Some really interesting fights. Actually, right before I got on here to start the show, there was a really interesting fight that I've been wondering when they're going to make. We'll talk about that. Ryan Garcia says he's in talks with a certain fighter that I know a lot of people would like him to face. And no, it's not Gervonta Davis, but it would be interesting. It would be a really interesting fight. Other news, the rumor out there, it sounds like it's a strong rumor. Sounds like it's legit, actually. If the fight makes sense, it's rumored to be on pay-per-view, and that's the troubling part. Keith Thurman and Barrios. Thurman and Barrios, which, considering Keith Thurman, hasn't fought in about 2.5 years, Barrios or a couple other, Abel Ramos, a couple other guys, I get that he'd come back. A lot of people say, he should just jump in there with Crawford. It's like, why would you do that? Look at how well he performed against Pacquiao, but he did get that Jose Cito fight in. Now, he looked good in that fight until he got hurt, right? So I understand there's a possibility him getting hurt and all that, but, I think in general it's smart for him to get a fight first before you start taking on a Spence or a Crawford or something like that. The problem I have is it's not a pay-per-view worthy fight. Now, maybe they're going to announce, because this isn't announced, by the way. This isn't 100%. It's just strongly rumored. And the fight itself, like I mentioned, Abel Ramos, a couple other fights out there, it makes sense for the level coming back. And, hey, if you're Barrios, a name like that, why not try to fight him 2.5 years out? This is the best time to fight him, really. But like I said, it's the pay-per-view thing. That's so if it's a $30 or $40 pay-per-view, I think people will be like, okay, because you see that on boxing Twitter. I don't know how much I really believe it, but you see people on boxing Twitter say, well, if this was $60 or $55 or $50, I'd pay for it, but I'm not paying $70 or $75 or whatever. And to an extent, I think there's something to that, but not much, to be honest with you. Now, when you cut it in half, now you're talking. You know what I mean? if something with tax costs you $80, you get it for 40. Okay, but much like that Luis Ortiz Charles Martin fight, I like that fight. That's a good fight. I'm just not a big I'm just not big on the pay-per-view part of that fight. And trust me, I've said it time and time again. There's been a ton of pay-per-views over the years that people say, oh, they'd never do this. Back in the day, they'd never do this. And then you go, oh, really? Do you know this fight was on pay-per-view? I know multiple people that bought. I mentioned it, go through it, Bobby Gunn and Roy Jones. I know I could name 4 people right now that bought that pay-per-view. I'm not one of them. But it just, to me, the Ortiz-Martin is a great Fox fight. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, there you go. Clearly there's something to this stuff. You know what I mean? Clearly there's something to this. And it's not like you got to break the bank for either of those guys. So if they can make a little bit of money on it, clearly there's something there. Fox doesn't just throw away money per se. But the Thurman Barrios, Barrios just, had a really good performance in front of a huge crowd in Atlanta against Tank. And, for what level of fight it is, it did, it made money on pay-per-view anyway, from the sounds of it, if you think about what, past break-even numbers were or whatever like that. But it's just, like I said, I hope it's discounted. Let's put it that way, because to me, I'm not a big fan of that. I like the fight. I think it's a good level for him to come back to, and I think it's a great opportunity for Barrios. But, it is what it is. Anyway, if this is your first time listening to the Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast, welcome. It streams live right here on blogtalkradio.com/Rope-A-Dope Radio. However, you don't have to go to Blog Talk and Rope-A-Dope and download the show directly there or listen to the browser if you don't want to. You can find the Rope-A-Dope Radio podcast on Apple Podcast, excuse me, iHeartRadio, Player FM, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spreaker. I'm all over the place. Also part of the Grueling Truth Sports Podcast Network. While you're at it, why don't you head on over to thegruelingtruth.com. And one more thing. If you're thinking about cutting the cord or you're not quite happy, I got something for you. It's called Direct TV Stream. The prices start as low as $69.99 a month. It's the best of live TV and on-demand. No annual contract, no hidden fees. If you upgrade to the Choice or Ultimate package, that'll give you 3 free months of HBO Max, plus you get to enjoy regional sports networks without the additional fee, which we're seeing more and more. If you even have the networks, you see that with a lot of different cable companies now. It's really kind of mind-blowing. Anyway, boxing fans, you'll like this. If you go all the way to the Premier package, that'll give you HBO Max and Showtime included in the sub. It's $11 for Showtime, by the way, on Direct TV Stream. All right. Anywho, so, like I said, last weekend was a busy fight weekend, no doubt about it, but it almost seems like we're just kind of getting used to that stuff, obviously, but because we've had so many cards. But this, I was just looking through the schedule like, oh, that's right, that's this weekend. Oh, that's right, that's this weekend. Oh, that's right, that's this weekend. Like, it's crazy. Anyway, we'll start with the Lomachenko and Comey fight. Pretty slow start. I actually gave Comey the first round, but like I said, pretty slow start. Beyond like a late left hand from Lomachenko, he didn't do a whole lot. There was a couple of nice body shots from Comey, but I gave him that round, but there wasn't. Let me see. Did I give him another round? I don't believe so. No, I didn't. It was pretty much Lomachenko after that. He was doing the old downloading thing. He didn't wait 7 rounds, though, like he did against Lopez. But you could see even by the second round, the fight started heating up more. And the left hand started landing for Lomachenko. You could kind of tell he was looking for that that counter, his timing started coming together. There was like a little combination that kind of stumbled Comey a bit. Like, what, under the 10-second mark or something like that? And was that the second or third round? But it was kind of funny, but kind of like, well, go finish him then. You know, I remember seeing that leg, right? It was, dude, his leg was like froze for a second. Comey's leg like froze. It was a really weird thing. I mean, of course, we've seen plenty of legs look bad and whatnot, but you know, he was doing this thing like, you know, you're going to stop this fight type thing. And, you know, from time to time, Lomachenko, you could tell he's just kind of having fun in the ring. You know, when some fighters do this, they get labeled a bunch of different things. But Loma has always kind of messed around in the ring at times. I mean, when it's time to get busy, it's time to get busy. I'm not saying that, but I don't know. I hear, like, I think Max was saying, you know, he doesn't have the stomach to finish him, and you know, he was actually just being a really good guy. And well, to be honest with you, if you're gonna look at it that way, to me, he was kind of being a dick then. Like, you gonna come get your boy, you know? But the funny thing is, he then didn't finish him, you know. So it was kind of like, okay. But yeah, he stumbled him pretty bad. It was like two left hands, and like I said, he kept pointing to the corner and whatnot. It was kind of funny. Don't get me wrong. But I did think Comey bounced back somewhat well anyway. He was starting to get inside and get some busy work done a little bit the very next round, which is kind of surprising to me, you know, because he did look pretty hurt. The counter left hands, the combinations, the quick combos early and late in the third round, you know, that's kind of what Loma was on, is in and out quick combos, you know, and his footwork. He's on this side of you, that side of you. It was basically the same thing. Jab left hand for one round. You know, he was mixing it up like Loma does. And by, you know, whatever, the 5th, 6th, 7th round, he was basically just outclassing him. Really. There was a short left hook that knocked him down. I think it was a short left hook, but it was two straight lefts before, and then a short left hook. And maybe that's when his leg, that's what it was. Yeah, because he was already, that's right, he did it early in the fight. That's what I was saying, like, is this the round? It feels early. The 7th round is where he started. That's where it was like his leg just went limp, Comey. You know, and he was asking his corner, are you going to stop this? You're going to come get your boy, basically. And, you know, Comey's legs looked really bad. I knew I should have been looking at my card earlier. So I was like, that seems too damn early. But there was like a late flurry and whatnot. And like I said, 10-8. You could make an argument that was a 10-7 round in the 7th. And, you know, dominant after that, really. I mean, some combinations here, a jab and a right hand at times by Comey, but, you know, not much. The cleaner puncher, the better defensive footwork, the whole nine. You know, this matchup was perfect for Lomachenko. That's not taking any credit away from his performance or Comey for that matter. But, you know, this was kind of lined up nice for him, stylistically. You know what I mean? But, you know, I thought, considering how, I guess you could say, hurt, you know, he looked, I thought he kind of manned up and finished it off. You know what I mean? So, really, 1 round, 2 rounds tops. There's not many rounds you can give to Comey. It was pretty much a one-sided fight. And now, off 2 good victories, where he looked really good. I'm speaking of Lomachenko, obviously. You know, it's time for him to mix it up again. And Bob Arum says that, he feels like the WBO is going to call a mandatory. We mentioned how at some point, well, the Devin Haney can never be a mandatory to the franchise belt, unfortunately. And then same with the WBA. Usually the Super doesn't have the mandatories, but now they're going through this, I'm glad they're doing it, but they're doing it in such a sanctioned belt boxing politics way that it's like, oh, that's cool in that weight class. That's bullshit there. Oh, that's cool. Why don't they call that fight? Oh, I'm glad they called that fight type thing. You know what I mean? Like what they're doing to Ugas. He could have a Spence fight right now, but they're making him fight Stanonius. You know what I mean? So, and then fight what's his name after. So it is what it is. However, so I guess when you look at the scenario, the WBA and the WBO are probably the ones that are going to call it before. And I don't know. I mean, the WBA, like I said, has been shaky on how they've been doing it. So you'd assume they just made him before it was the 130 belt that he had to drop. Oh, wow. Some crazy lightning behind there. It is so weird to see lightning in December. Where was I? Oh, yeah, so I don't know. The best shot is the WBO, and then maybe the BA, because they have been trying to clean up the mess they started, So at some point, they're going to have to call Gervonta as well. And like I said, but when push comes to shove, I don't know. If the WBO doesn't call it, like a Mando, I believe that Devin Haney will get it because I don't see who's going to outbid DAZN in this scenario. I just, especially with Eddie Hearn, and I don't know if this is just him being a promoter or not, but he did say that they had plans, DAZN in general, at putting more money and investing a little bit more and expanding their subscriber base in Australia. So what better way than to do a fight in Australia? Now, who knows? I mean, if they're putting up the money, maybe they'll say, hey, we'll give you this kind of money, but we're not going to Australia. So, I guess we'll find out how much they plan on, putting a dent into Australia, off of this fight. But, yeah, there's just something, I don't know. I just feel like even if let's say they do call the I take that back. If they call the WBO, maybe they'll just work something out, right? But I feel like they could just be like, well, go to a purse bid, and then DAZN will pick it up. Eddie will pick it up. But then again, what am I saying? He would pick up the Loma fight. Maybe he would, and just to get the other one. But I really think the money value there, I do think DAZN, to get Haney a fight, I do think DAZN will come up big to get that. And it seems like Haney's willing to travel. That's what it sounds like anyway. So we'll see. But, yeah, like I said, two good performances coming off a mediocre, at times poor, at times very good performance against Lopez. Whether it was the shoulder that was the main reason or not, it is what it is. That's boxing. You know what I mean? It may not be fair, but that's what it is. On the undercard, Keyshawn Davis, nice little, a left hook to the body stoppage. I think he's now 4-0. Of course, Nico Walsh /Ali. He fought a 4-rounder, and yeah, that's about it. No, he actually had some problems in the third and fourth round, and I remember hearing the interview saying, yeah, they're fast tracking you, dude. Dude I faced was undefeated. So yeah, whatever. I mean, it is what it is. I'm not trying to hate on the guy by any chance, do you? But, let's just watch him develop and see what happens. I mean, Lord knows we're going to have to watch him. He's going to be on the broadcast. So, man, I'm choking over here. Okay. Man, I hope I don't lose power. Okay. Oh, yeah, then Jared Anderson against Teslenko. Shorty the Pimp. I wish I had that song queued up. Shorty the Pimp. Boom, 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 boom. He walks with a limp. Anderson had his little swag going on, walking in, and he walked in and walked out, basically. It was real easy. He actually started in southpaw, if I recall, landing several heavy left hands, putting in some nice body work. Later in that first round, he landed a nice, actually left and right hooks to the body, now that I remember. Couple of decent lands for Teslenko, but nothing too crazy. You know what I mean? And it didn't take long, like I said. It was like big right hand hurt him, like really bad, and it was over. I mean, it was over. You know, it was a good performance. So what is he, 8-0 with 8 KOs or something like that? So, yeah, I mean, I like what I see out of Jared Anderson, dude. You know, we obviously, you know, will he be the next generation heavyweight from the USA? I mean, he's got a chance to be, that's for sure. He's definitely athletic. He's got good footwork. He's got fundamentals. I think that I don't know, he's aggressive. So there's times where you go, man, he just got clipped right there, you know? But when you say, well, first of all, you're going to get punched. It's boxing, right? But I'm talking about, you know, at the high levels with guys that can really punch. You know, sometimes we kind of fall in love with punchers. Other times we kind of overdo, like, hey, dude, he needs to slow down. Well, look at his level of competition right now. And I'm not saying, oh, they're slow rolling them, they're going to, you know, milk them or nothing like that. I'm saying, like, he probably won't be as aggressive, you know, as he steps up until he feels more comfortable with who he's facing and taking a punch and whatnot. So I did hear some folks say, man, considering, you know, how short of a fight it was, man, he got hit a lot, you know, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I hear you, but I didn't really see, you know, I don't think there's a big worry at this point that he won't be able to be on the top levels of the sport just because he was getting clipped here. Let's see it against the higher level guy. But I guess that would be the only thing I could think of, to be honest with you. But, like, really, that's the only thing I can – a couple times I've seen him get hit kind of clean coming in. But like I said, it kind of looks like he's just trying to knock dude out. And then Xavier Zayas, what is he, 6-0 this year or 7-0, 6-0, something like that. He had a quick little, overhand rights. Really quick little fight business as well. A lot of people are giving Xander the prospect of the year, which I get. He's been active. He's been busy. And he's looked damn good doing it. You know what I mean? And that's a key thing, too. Obviously, we'll get into it in a few weeks, but the prospect of the year, fight of the year, fighter of the year, all that good stuff, upset of the year, knockout of the year, comeback of the year, lots of different stuff that, you know, to choose from. But with prospect of the year, I'm a little bit different. For instance, I'm not saying he's going to get it. I'm just using it as an example. But David Burrell Jr. right now, to me, where I have him ranked, he's still a prospect. Now, I understand, you know, he's got a secondary belt. But that's why I like this fight coming up for him. And I like how they're going to move him faster, but not like, oh, in 3 fights you got a championship fight against one of the toughest guys in the division. You know what I mean? But I look at him as a prospect still. And could you say that just based off eye test he could be a contender? Sure. Yeah, I'll give you that. You can put him in the top 10, but he doesn't have a bunch of wins or a good quality win to get him in the top 10. I mean, it is what it is. You know, maybe lower half of the top 10, that's fine. Like I said, just eye test. But they're trying to get him rounds. They're trying to get him, you know, like experience. So my point is, sometimes you go from prospect to champion. Sometimes you go prospect to contender in one fight, and then you're a champion the next one, you know? But if you're a prospect and you win a belt, that doesn't take, like, to me, that doesn't prospect of the year away, you know? Now, if you've already beaten some guys where you've been a contender for a handful of fights, okay, that's different. But I do judge it a little bit. The reason why I do that is because so many of these guys are, 7-0, knocking out people that don't really count. We won't know until, I mean, of course it counts on their record. I'm not saying that. But, like, we don't really know where they're going to be. So why go and give somebody a prospect of the year? Now, you know, Xander's a little different because he's been really active as well. And they've been, you know, slowly but surely putting his competition up. So you can be in that fringe contender prospect mode and, you know, get a really solid win. And for me, that makes you prospect of the year. But, you know, I've had lots of debates over the years on you're crazy and, you know, what are you talking about? That's not a prospect of the year and all that. You know, on one hand, they'll rip a WBA belt, right? They'll call it like the Reggie or, you know, the secondary belt. On the other hand, their debate to me is he's got a belt, dude. You know, so it's like, okay, well, which one is it, dude? You tell me. But yeah, there wasn't a whole lot more to talk about on that card that I remember. Moving on to Showtime, Brandon Lee. What was it, 7th round? It was like probably 40, 50 seconds into the 7th round. A left-right combination, drops him, knocks him down, knocks him out. I thought he looked very good in that fight. And I'm, you know, definitely looking for him to keep, you know, rising. He's definitely on the radar. Donaire, you know, took care of business again, dude. I mean, this Gobayo guy. It's funny. I'm pretty sure. I think last week, and I misspoke because I was like, wait, didn't most people think he lost his last fight? I got a little confused with his last fight. I believe I did. I'm just trying to think out loud. I'm pretty sure I did, but I thought I caught myself going, wait a second. I'm not sure he won his last fight. I think that's how it went. But anyway, once the week went on and I started thinking about, like, oh, that's right. That's right. It was him. That was the fight. I think I got it confused momentarily. I may have fixed it, though. I just can't remember, to be honest with you. But Donaire, you know, speaking of freezing someone, like a left hook landed super flush like in the 2nd round, and just for a moment, just a tad bit, he froze Gobayo. I mean, it was kind of funny. Now, Gobayo managed to land some jabs and some nice right hands and little body work. Like the 3rd round was a close round, but the combinations to the head and body, of course, the counter left hand. There was a small cut by the 3rd round, I believe, on the right eye of Gobayo. Little back and forth before this thing ended to the body. There was some good back and forth in that 4th round, but it was like a body. It was like a right and a left hook to the body, and then another left hook to the body. So a late body shot TKO, and I call it TKO because he did get up and then went right back down. It was almost like he was testing it by getting up, you know, and like, oh yeah, no, I'm done. So once again, speaking of comeback fighter of the year. I mean, Nonito Donaire's got to be up there. Some people are trying to say fighter of the year. I don't think his wins have been big enough, but it's just, what is he, 39 now, especially at these little weight classes. Obviously, him going down, you know, we all kind of thought, is that the best thing at this age? But, you know, you also in the back of your head, you're like, yeah, I mean, 126 definitely wasn't a good weight class for him. 122 was better. But, man, if he can be healthy and be at 118. He's so long and lanky and talented and skillful. I mean, the guy, is a Hall of Famer, by the way. Some people still argue that. I think Abner Mares and, speaking of, and Nonito Donaire, I wish we would have got to see that fight. But I think they're both, they had runs that puts them in the Hall of Fame for me, personally, Now, the really interesting fight here was Abdu Kabarov, Abdu Kakarov, and Crowley. And, I mean, if you look at, I'm looking at my scorecard right now. I mean, for the first, obviously the second round, there was that knockdown. But, God, the first 4 rounds, Crowley was getting it in, dude. He was bringing the pressure. He was doing his thing. That was the first round, not the second round, was it? It was the first round. He was bringing a ton of pressure, and he was finding the home like over and over again with big shots. But it's funny. He got in front of him and kind of froze a little bit and got dropped with a left hook. I believe it was a left hook by Abdu Kabarov. And so it gave him the round. No, it was the second round maybe. But that's about it for a while. Crowley got caught, but he came back with his own left hooks, pressuring a whole lot, pushing the pace, straight left hands. At times he'd kind of do this little step back just in spots, and then get back to being busier, landing the better shots. Whereas it seemed like Abdu Kagarov got stuck into trying to land the counter that had happened in the first round, And Cody just, what is he, the drifter? He drifted a little bit in the 5th round. And Abdu Kabarov was bleeding pretty bad. What was it, from his left ear, I think? You could say Crowley was busier. Every round he was busier, basically. But I do think good back and forth 5th round, but I think the left hand's late. And a left hook to the body and a left hand upstairs probably won him that round. But then I look again and I'm like, okay, so how many more rounds? I gave him a couple more rounds, but Crowley I gave the 6th. And like I said, he just needed to be busier. He basically won that with the jab and, left hands to the head. It wasn't, wasn't all that complicated. Just out hustling him, overall. And then by the 7th and 8th round, you started to see Abdu Kabarov move a lot then. And it was like, whoa, man, you're just going to look for one shot at a time, and now you're just moving a lot? I don't know. You really couldn't give him that many more rounds. And Crowley just kept following him, kept jabbing, those whipping right hands. Like I said, just overall charging forward, getting the job done. He outlanded him 206 to 123. And then here's a big difference here. Not only just outlanded him, but 898 to 402. And you look at power shots, 182 to 99. So, yeah, it was dominant. One scorecard had a 95, 94. I didn't see that. 98, 91, 97, 92. I'm not saying Crowley didn't, of course he won, the one where he got knocked down. One at least for sure, if not 2. Probably, maybe 2 more, I don't know. But Crowley he did his thing, man. And I love stories like this where they just, we've seen him fight before. I think he's been on some of those FS1 cards too and looked pretty good. And here's this guy that has been taking step-aside money so they don't call the IBF. In fact, it's funny, before this fight, I even saw, the biggest Crawford fanboy saying that, of course, Spence is ducking this guy, you know what I mean? I did actually thought that would be the fight Spence would come back to, though. Once the Ugas fight fell apart, I did think this would be the fight he'd come back to. But I was wrong. And Cody Crowley got the job done, dude. The Canuck, Canada, the Drifter, drifted on down and drifted on back, and he's got to be loving life right now. So it's always fun, when these type of guys win a fight kind of out of nowhere. Not that he was just, this wasn't like a done deal or something. I mean, that's why they fight the fights, right? But I liked what I saw, and I just think, oh boy, I was just kind of thinking it was almost like one of the worst things that could happen to him is score that knockdown after he was getting beat in the round. Then the knockdown helped him, obviously, but it was almost like, okay, well, I'll just do that a couple more times and I'll win this fight. And it just didn't seem like he was, he kept saying, this is my third southpaw that I fought. So I'm going to knock him out, then I'm going to knock Spence out. And him and his team were real extra confident. It just was like, well, just get by this dude, But yeah, man, it's at the same time, I kind of feel for him a little bit because he did allow some better fights to happen and whatnot. But once the IBF calls it, you're going to either have to do it or you're going to have to drop the belt. But it had never been officially called, and now the IBF's going to kind of restart the process. And I wouldn't doubt if they call for an eliminator. You know what I mean? Because I don't believe Crowley was because he doesn't have a belt, so I don't think he was ranked. Actually, let me double check. I don't think he was ranked in the top. Let me check. I don't think he was even in the top 15 in the IBF anyway. And obviously, these are just their rankings. I'm not saying he's a top 15 fighter, but all right, so. Yeah, no, that dude was not ranked in the top 15. And he didn't have to be because, like I said, he didn't have a title. But Sean Porter's out. So Ennis and Ortiz are third and fourth. So would that be the title eliminator? I doubt. I don't think that fight would happen for a title eliminator. Now, if they did a vacant belt, I guess you could make an argument for it. But I highly doubt the first thing either fighter, to be honest with you. But I don't know. I just think that they have other plans for Virgil Ortiz. And Boots isn't in it. I mean, I'm not saying anyone's afraid of anybody or nothing like that. I'm just saying I just don't know if that'd be the case, And they'll probably wait until, which is not even long from now. They'll probably wait for Spence to drop the belt when he goes to 54, They can't just give Crowley the title eliminator and be like, okay, well, it wasn't a title eliminator for one, and so they can't just be like, okay, we're calling him a Mando. That's not how it works because technically speaking, they never called the mandatory. So, dude was in mandatory range, but it didn't get called. So who knows, though? Like I said, a lot of times they just make this stuff up. So it is what it is. I'm going to bring in John here in just a moment. To get his take on the weekend and whatnot. Oh, Bivol fought a 12-round decision. I forgot to mention that. Oh, yeah, Connor Benn. Katie Taylor won a fight pretty easily. Wasn't really much competition there. But Connor Benn looked pretty good. His punching power, it's somewhat hard to say just how good it is. I mean, he caught Algieri with a whole lot, right? But when he did drop him, he zapped him for a moment. I mean, Algieri was hurt, no doubt about it. And he's coming along. Now, it is kind of funny. If I were Connor Benn, and I'm not, by the way, I don't know if I'd be like calling out Broner. Now, I'd let hear me out. I'd let Eddie call out Broner, but I don't know. Like, how much, I get it. That is a fight that you want to make. It'll sell a fair amount of tickets overseas. I don't know if they're going to be able to pay Broner enough to come over there. I mean, they may. Well, wait, they're not on pay-per-view anymore. Of course, they actually do have a DAZN. I'll get to that in the boxing Twitter segment, fight news segment. they've now officially, I guess you could say, filed the paperwork, got the license, but the Zone pay-per-view is coming to a theater near you. I mean, it's already come to the States here to an extent anyway, with the Canelo fights. But my point is, how much money are they going to give Broner to not only just fight a young dude, but go overseas? I mean, it's going to take some money. So we'll see. Maybe there's not a ton of money for another fight as it is. You know what I mean? So maybe he would take it for a little less than we think. But so I get it. Like, it's a name, and they already said they don't want to fight Avanesian. I don't know how many more fights you can go without fighting him, though, because he's a good fighter. But if you think you got something here, you're not afraid of Avanesian. And I'm not saying they're not. I'm not saying Conor Benn's afraid, but IFL TV and others, Boxing Social, they have been kind of on it. Like, well, how many more fights do you think he needs before he fought Avanesian? And he wants to make sure he, takes his time, and you want to have a belt riding on it. And I think they're doing the same thing with a lot of these people are doing. They know, let's say in right now next year, right around this time, that we do actually get the Spence Crawford. We already know Spence is going to go up. I mean, it's hard enough for him to make the weight, even being disciplined. But he's always been a big dude there. So we always knew that was going to happen. And time out of the ring doesn't make that go away. That only makes it harder, right? Even if you're staying in shape, if you're not making it down to that exact weight, and it's been months and months and all of a sudden a year, that gets taxing even more on your body. But I just think that they're all kind of waiting and lingering, and then there's going to be title fights and all that, and then it'll be worth it to make it like a fight with Avanesian or whatever. But I get why Eddie Hearn wants Broner. I think it's actually a popular fight in the UK, but the whole calling out Broner does kind of make me chuckle a little bit, because it's like, dude, I want you. It's like, man, he's so old and fake. Look at how he looked in his last fight. He looked horrible. But like I said, I get it. And Conor's on his own, like he's on his own time frame. And I know a lot of people, and it's legit, that will say, well, he's fighting all these has-beens, and when's the last time Algieri beat someone solid? And I get all that, Samuel Vargas and all that, But this is what happened in boxing. This is what's happened. This is what happens. It's not anything new to sit there and beat faded vets. I mean, and then the promoter turns around and said, well, how long did it take Spence to knock out Algieri? Now, what was that, 2016? It was like 5 years ago. But still, that's how this stuff goes. You know what I mean? And same with Broner and whatever. That's just how it goes. So, it's such a rough division at the top. Damn, why Eddie wants him to move him this way. And it's not like he had a long amateur career or something like that. You know what I mean? So, anyway, I did want to talk about Conor Benn a little bit. Like I said, Bivol won a fight, a 12-round fight. It is what it is. I'm not going to go round for round. I'm glad that he's boxing. He's been kind of, he's just been missing in action, dude. He had a nice little run a couple years back, and then it's been like, whatever, I really just want, how we say, oh, we want Benavidez and Charlo to fight at 168, or now plant Benavidez, right, and earn a Canelo fight. Well, I mean, Bivol and Beterbiev, I've actually heard multiple sources now that Beterbiev, however you say it, is actually on his contract. So maybe that's why they're just kind of like, oh, by the way, he's fighting. It's on the plus. Anyway, they're really not, it's not like it's not some kind of worthy big fight or anything, but his career has just been a weird disappointment. He has one really, really good win, and then some okay wins that he looked good in, and then others where you're just like, dude, it's just been stop and start for him, man. But yeah, why not fight Bivol and Beterbiev? Let them fight, and then Canelo can fight the winner. You know, that would work too. Either way, I mean, if I was DAZN, if I was Eddie Hearn, and that is true, that he's going to be a free agent, then I would sign him and try to do that. That way you have some a fight that Canelo would be interested in. Didn't they have Bivol before, or do they still have him? I feel like, is he under full contract? I can't remember. But you might as well get both of those and make that fight, dude. You know what I mean? Why not? I mean, maybe they'll do you'll get both and have them fight them both. Canelo, I don't know. But either way, we'll see. I mean, I don't think any of that's going to happen next anyway. So, but I did want to get that in there. But like I said, this weekend, it's just, as a hardcore fight fan, I love me some boxing. There's so much to watch. It's awesome. But, man, so much gets missed in this stuff. But ESPN Plus, in 2 days, from Montreal, Toro Beterbiev and Marcus Brown. Who knows what we're going to get from Marcus Brown? A few years ago, maybe I'd be like, oh, dude, you never know. He's got power. But it is what it is. You know what I mean? We'll see how that fight turns out. Thompson Boxing on Facebook and YouTube, by the way, has a card Friday night. Soro and Madrimov. I'm actually looking. That's a WBA junior middleweight eliminator. I really like the fight. On paper, I'd say that's probably the most interesting fight on paper. That's my thoughts on that anyway. And that's on DAZN. That's also Friday. On Saturday on DAZN, Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez is taking on Gonzalez for a WBA light heavyweight eliminator. This Gonzalez, isn't this the Gonzalez on HBO like in 2015? Probably should have beat Pascal. Weren't we saying, man, Pascal should hang him up after that fight? But then now we do remember how he, failed a bunch of stuff. The undercard, though, Estrada Santizo, I think it is, Lamont Roach Jr. and Rene Alvarado. Now, that's another one. That's 130. That's another. It's a 10-rounder. That's an interesting fight that really stands out to me. I might put that second or third as far as interest level. Esparza and Ortiz should be a good fight as well on that card. So that's a pretty good undercard. Obviously, Jake Paul and Woodley Part 2. Amanda Serrano is on that card as well. Shouts out to her. And then on Fox, you have David Morrell Jr. and Alantez Fox, Jose Valenzuela against Austin Dulé. I think that's a good prospect fight. I think that's a really good prospect fight for what it is. Local Vashon Owens actually takes on Alberto, Puello. That might be interesting. Now, this is on the FS1 card. Richardson Hitchens and Malik Hawkins at 140. I think that's an interesting fight. Hector Luis Garcia and Isaac Alvalar. Alvalara? Alvalar. That's what it is. Here, let me look at it. Maybe if I looked at it, I can say it better. That's an 8-rounder at 135. So it's FS1 at 5 Central, so 6 o'clock Eastern, and then the Fox show kicks in. We also obviously have Joseph Parker and Derek Chisora as well. It's like I said, there's just so much this weekend, dude. That is this weekend, right? The Chisora fight? See, that's where it is. It is. Yep. It's on DAZN from Manchester. The Gongora Richards fight is fairly equally matched. That might be a really, interesting fight there. But like I said, it's a busy fight weekend that I hope produces like 2 or 3 just can't miss fights. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to go to John here, great boxing mind, John. Bring him into the fold and get his takes on what happened from last weekend and talk a little bit about what's going on for this busy Friday and Saturday. What's going on, John? How you doing?
Hey, Chris. Great to be here. Of course, we were saturated with boxing last weekend, and think of me what you will, but I was able to catch just about all of that, which was kind of an undertaking in itself. And hearing you go through this weekend stuff, you're reminding me that we're kind of looking at another weekend like that this weekend, and last weekend was just a complete marathon to catch all that action. So we'll see how this weekend goes, but that's a lot of volume in the 2 weekends, that's for sure. Yeah,
and it's just so much, man. It's almost like it's homework. You know, it's almost like, all right, this is actually a long sitting. Like, it's funny, there's so much of it now. You just can't find the time to actually watch a lot of the prospect stuff, like on each card. Because if you start to add up all the prospect stuff in the main stuff, that can be anywhere from, well, you know, it used to be like sometimes it'd reach 16 fights, but ever since COVID hit, it usually doesn't go that wide. It's cards, but I mean, it can be 8 or 10 fights easy on one card. I mean, it adds up to like 30 fights in a weekend really quickly sometimes, or at least 20. And you kind of got to pick and choose. And if somebody says, hey, you got to check this prospect out, okay, I'll check that out later. And it's like it's really hard to get it all done. And like you said, it really it takes some time. It's like a take-home quiz, but you don't have the book, that you could just go through it. Oh, take-home quiz, sweet, this will be easy. No, you don't have the book. You got to actually read the stuff all the way through. So we might as well get into it. Lomachenko, stylistically, we kind of knew that Comey, was made nicely for him, and Lomachenko did take care of business. Now, he did have Comey, that leg froze up for a while. It looked like he was hurt. Lomachenko kind of doing his little, hot dogging that he loves to do from time to time, talking about, hey, you gotta, get this guy out of here. Like, why don't you come get your guy here to the corner? But he didn't finish him. So we'll start with that card. Obviously, Jared Anderson and some other, a really high-profile prospect as well on the card. And no, I'm not talking about Nico. What are your thoughts on this here ESPN card and Lomachenko's performance now, back-to-back, where he looked pretty good, and it looks like he's ready for a big step-up fight?
Because I just think, and you agree, Chris, we do it a lot. I mean, I think you have to address the marketing part of it. A lot of people want to try to pretend they're above it, but it's too much a part of the game as to who's going to fight who. And I'll always say this in response to people who say the numbers don't matter and things like that. Why do you care? Well,
right.
We podcast. People get on Twitter all the time. My point of that is obviously you want to interact with other boxing fans. People can't deny that no matter what they want to say. All these, again, Twitter, podcasts, Facebook, etc. So obviously the more fans that are out there, the more chance you get to interact. So with that said, the popularity of your sport matters and how many people are watching. People who say they don't care, really, I'm going to submit that really deep down you do care. So I think, even though those numbers were a little over 1 million, I think basically we're at a point where Top Rank and ESPN they copied, so to speak, what PBC was doing when they saw that was a way to rebuild. And there was no doubt that what PBC did initially and what then Top Rank kind of copying and following, the idea was to get to selling pay-per-views. I mean, Bob Arum said that from the beginning. I mean, I think, people are saying now that PBC, they messed with. No, they never they never were saying we're never going to get to a pay-per-view. You know, it was just the idea was we're going to bring free boxing back with the way it used to be. That's going to kind of build to a pay-per-view. Why I'm saying all this before PN card from Saturday is because I do think this is important to me. You know, PBC's really falling off that. It's obvious. I mean, okay, we have a Fox card, as you mentioned, Saturday night, but it's just not a good one. Let's face it. It's not gonna do good ratings. So, you know, Top Rank, all right, they had Crawford and Porter, but they hadn't done anything only the joint pay-per-views, you know, the Fury Wilder. They haven't run one on their own since that Crawford Khan disaster. So I think they want to get to it, but they're sticking with the free, so to speak, which I'm calling basic cable free, and, you know, the ESPN Plus app, which is still pretty low priced. We don't know what those numbers were exactly, but they're sticking with that now, obviously, maybe just a hair longer than PBC, and we'll see how that plays out. You know, I don't think, you know, $1 million plus whatever Lomachenko did on the apps necessarily particularly good, but it is like we had to talk. I said the same thing for PBC when they were running free things out there. It's still more people saw Lomachenko than are seeing these other guys, and believe it or not, than are seeing these other guys on pay-per-view. So, you know, for some guys, I think they still benefit when you're still out there. So, you know, Lomachenko got the headline. It maybe didn't do the numbers you'd think, because his numbers on ESPN had been surprisingly good when he appeared. But this wasn't that great, but was good for him to at least be seen by 1 million plus, which nobody's getting right now, including these people appearing on pay-per-view. So I thought Lomachenko looked good. I agree with you. He's just hot dog, and that's not, you know, comical people saying he was having mercy on Comey. You know, he ran into the corner. I mean, you know, that's a bunch of crap. Get the guy out of there. The ref will be happy to stop the fight. You know, again, it's the ref's job to stop the fight. Ref didn't stop it, made the right call. Lomachenko's job is to get him out of there. Really the only flaw then so for Lomachenko was, I'm with you, I mean, and this was to Lomachenko's credit, he's showing good lightweight power, and that's even kind of progressed. He's gotten more aggressive in a good way as his career's gone on. I've always given him some credit for that, because kind of difficult, you know, he's a technician, and, you know, in the pro game, you know, with the amount of fights he's had, you have been able to see him as time's gone on really make an adjustment to be more aggressive, more like a pro in that sense. And I actually think he's done a pretty good job of it. You know, you see him throw body shots. He throws that hard overhand left to the head. You know, he hurt Comey bad with it. You know, you saw him knock Rocky Martinez basically cold with it. You know, he's pretty good with that, but this was one like he couldn't quite do the finish, kind of like with Campbell. Although I thought Campbell was in survival mode. I don't think Comey was. He just couldn't do anything with Lomachenko. Overall, I do give Lomachenko a good grade on this performance. I don't think like his big boosters want to make out that it was this big moment of mercy, or that he reestablished himself as the number one lightweight in the world with this performance. I mean, a guy that Teofimo Lopez recently blew out. I don't see how you reestablish yourself as the number one lightweight in the world with a clear unanimous decision over the same guy. So I don't see it that way, but he's right there with the other, you know, with the other four guys. Now we've got really another four who are right there, and lightweight's extremely interesting. One thing that I'm still scratching my head, usually I've come to a firm conclusion on this, and now this, like you called it, of course, and you're right, it really wasn't. It was an impromptu, unofficial lightweight tournament in the best possible way. Had the real title involved, which changed hands from Lopez to Kambosos, who kind of, to me, came out of nowhere. I mean, with that kind of a performance. And then you had all the other top guys. I mean, Gervonta Davis surprised me by, frankly, making the lightweight limit easily. Had tougher time than expected with Isaac Cruz, but you know, he seems to be back in that division. To me, that's a surprise. I thought he'd be headed for welterweight at his age, you know, later 20s. But with his style, you know, I've gone through that before. I think he has a kind of style that he might need to be moving up in weight while he's got that youth. But he's down at lightweight, and there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. You know, Ryan Garcia, which I thought was interesting because I think he was serious about it. You heard Lomachenko in the pre-fight. He thinks Ryan people knock Ryan Garcia. Lomachenko thinks that Ryan Garcia is the most dangerous out of the other guys out there. And, Ryan Garcia is with Golden Boy, so Lomachenko doesn't have any particular interest in saying that. He's with Top Rank. So I think he was actually serious. That's his opinion. And, you've got Haney, won a clear decision over Diaz. He's not really coming in with as many exciting performances, but he's got that amateur pedigree and, developed at a very young age. He's still very young, good size for the weight. Certainly you're not going to count him out. So what I've scratched my head, though, is getting back to that is I can't figure out really what fight kind of should be next, because usually I'll go with what's the best in-house option and just be realistic. But that's not necessarily clear because of the promotional things. I mean, you've got Ryan Garcia fights on DAZN, as does Haney, and they have a close amateur series. Mentioned it before, they fought in Charleston, West Virginia once, so they've actually got a history. But they are with different promoters. One's Matchroom, one's Golden Boy, but TV they can make that. Then you've got, Gervonta. He's with PBC. He's been doing Showtime pay-per-view, and he's really been staying on the Showtime side of things. And, I do agree with some people out there who say the numbers are mystical. I mean, and, even Steven Espinosa literally said it the other day on Twitter, I don't have to give you those numbers, and the streamers don't. And he's right, but marketability, I do find myself wondering, I don't know exactly how this is going. I know it's going good enough for them to run Tank on pay-per-view, but they're not talking numbers. And part of you does have to say if they were that good, they'd be out there. Doesn't mean they're not better than what other guys would have done. I think they probably are, but again, we don't know. So, where does this whole thing, and then you got Lomachenko, with ESPN and Top Rank, where does this thing go? What fight, can be made? A lot of people are speculating that maybe the easiest then ends up being, Kambosos with Lomachenko, but, Kambosos just had Hearn. With the way the fight turned out, it didn't look like it, but it ended up being a pretty savvy move, putting it on DAZN. I'll give Hearn that. I certainly didn't think it going in. So, Kambosos coming off a DAZN fight. He's talked about Haney. I don't know where it's going. I guess I'll have to default, like some other people have said. All of those matchups are good, and I do agree with that. Part of me would love to just see, just for the excitement of it all, I think, if you had Tank going after the real title, which Kambosos has, I mean, that would have to be, Kambosos probably fighting in a PBC setting. I don't know if that would happen, but that would be, I guess deep down I'm thinking, I'm not saying that's the most likely to happen, but that might be kind of the biggest. But I don't know, if we're going to get that. I don't know where PBC and Tank are going from here. But, I think we could maybe get back to that by going to the rest of the card. I love the way Jared Anderson looked. Good style coming into the ring. I liked it at the Garden and taking care of business quickly. This thought I did want to get out there because it kind of came to me after the fight. And I've been a big Wilder booster. So if anybody says it's me being a Wilder hater, it's quite the opposite. But, even after 11 fights, I did find myself thinking after that knockout, and it was on ESPN, that, maybe we are at the start of where the American heavyweight torch is being passed here. Deontay Wilder, that's fight of the year to me. Nothing's going to top it. Fury Wilder 3, great effort by Deontay, and I think Fury is the champ and the best heavyweight of the world, but Deontay getting on the wrong side of 35, came in at a heavyweight and just really slugged it out. Didn't try to do anything differently. I mean, I think he's been overly criticized sometime, but as good as that fight was, he was just bombing away with the right hand and not really doing much else. And I don't see where it, I'm kind of having trouble seeing where it goes from here for him. He almost seems to be talking a little bit that way himself. I'm not saying he's not fighting again, but I don't blame the guy. He's made a lot of money. It's the toughest sport. He took a lot of punishment in his last 2 fights. If he wants to think about what he wants to do, I don't blame him. As we know, most times the fighters come back, but I just think if we're going to be realistic here, and it's not a knock on Deontay Wilder, but that torch might start to have been passed, because we know we're not deep at American. And those really, to me, I mean, the way we stand now, I mean, those are pretty much the two guys, even though Anderson's only got 11 fights and Deontay Wilder's been carrying the torch for the U.S. for a long time. I mean, Hunter just had a dreadful performance where he was held to a draw. Let's face it, he's out of things. He's kind of undersized, as we know, as well. So, he's not that young. So, I mean, I think that, this might be I think we might be at the start of the Jared Anderson era, because, again, Wilder on pay-per-view, Fury Wilder 3 did pretty well, and we know that's where people are paying to see it. But, again, it's being seen, and, so Anderson's getting seen by about 1 million people on Saturday, having an impressive knockout. He's young. He's, punching well, so he's entertaining. I mean, I think we don't think of Top Rank for heavyweights, but I think that torch has started to be passed. So that was a big night to me for Anderson, and Keyshawn Davis on there. Again, this was a good night this is what PBC was doing, but this was a good night for Top Rank, I think, with this kind of exposure. Keyshawn Davis on there, signed him, great amateur pedigree, Olympian, silver medalist, looks great. And every fight I've seen the guy as a pro, except one, he's looked great. So people saw that. I mean, I want to see this guy. He's charismatic. I think, even with about 1 million viewers, not as many as we would have expected, but, we don't know what was seen on the app, and they do simulcast on the app now too. And ESPN Plus has been picked up by a lot of people. So, it might be a better number combined, not rationalized, but it really might. It might be a better number combined than we think, because they're not telling you what the streaming numbers were, in addition to the million traditional, your traditional Nielsen type numbers. So that it was around there for Lomachenko, and he started later. So good exposure and good performances for Keyshawn Davis and Jared Anderson. A joke with the Nico Ali Walsh, which I'm not in favor of. I don't like it. His numbers are good, which I just hate it, but you have to be real. You just have to be honest. I mean, it's just nuts, but his numbers are pretty good. I still think they're giving him slots that they should give to other people, but he should have been held to a draw in that fight. I mean,
sure,
he got a gift, that not being a draw. And I don't like to talk about the judging as much as other people, Chris, but you do have to say that one. What the one judge have at 4-0 for Ali Walsh? I mean, where the
I was just about to check that. Actually, I was just about to check that.
Where the hell did that come from? I mean, that one is enough to make you cynical. I mean, he gets a 4. He gets a 4-0.
Yeah, 40-36. Yep.
I mean, that's dreadful, because, okay, if he wanted to stretch it and give him the 4th round, but that 1 round, he was getting battered. I wouldn't go as far as say he was in trouble, but, he was taking shots from a guy who was crude and didn't bring any talent in. And so, that was dreadful, but caught all that, and, we can go on, touch a little bit on the DAZN stuff. I caught all that all afternoon. Connor Benn, you'd addressed. I mean, I went back and reminded myself, and I even saw the fight. It was when he was first coming up, but I was thinking so little of him at the time. I had to actually remind myself. He fought the French guy who was like 5'4" and 3, and he got dropped heavily twice in the first round. Why I'm bringing that up now is, now he got back to showing some power against Algieri. I give him that. I'm going to give him that. That's better. But he's in a very deep division, and I think this is where people are trying to have it both ways who like Connor Benn. I mean, and it's literally a lot of the same people. Like, they want to tell you, not alphabet stuff, like even throwing the alphabets out, because he did just hit 10 in transnational, which I opposed. I mean, but, I'm not one vote. You know what I mean? So I don't mind saying I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I mean, he came in at 10. I opposed that. I thought, Staniona should be at 10 instead of him. And there were others who agreed, but a little bit of a majority thought Benn should be in. So what I'm just saying here is not just with the transnational board, but I mean with just writers, podcasters, people that follow it. which is it? Is Conor Benn legitimately top 10 and this power's for real and all this ability's for real, or does he need more seasoning? I mean, which is it? Because it's the same people who are trying to tell me that Conor Benn is top 10, legit top 10, not alphabet. I mean, just one of the 10 best welterweights in the world. But then they want to say, oh, he needs more time. He needs more seasoning.
Right.
But he's not legit top 10. I mean, if he's legit top 10, he's ready for other top 10 contenders. I mean, you mentioned it, people mention it. I'll actually, believe it or not, though, I don't think he needs – I'm with you. I mean, I don't think he needs to be afraid of Avanesian, but I think that's probably as far as his level goes. I am suspect here. They don't want him in with people that can punch back with any kind of authority. I mean, we're not just talking about punchers. We're just talking about people that punch back with any kind of authority. I mean, Samuel Vargas, Formella, Algieri, what do these people all have in common? They can't punch. They can't punch. And when you're talking about, Formella and like Algieri, you're talking about guys that don't even really bring much of an offense. Like, I mean, Vargas, his offense, it's not like sophisticated, and he doesn't bring pop, but, he would throw punches. But, like Formella, like Algieri. I mean, Algieri has no amateur pedigree whatsoever. I mean, he's like a personal trainer guy. He's got a master's degree. Interesting, intelligent guy. And like I saw some people who were boosters of his, I think maybe like Ron Katz said it, and Ron's from New York, made a good point. Like, his career went much farther than we ever thought it would have gone, and I agree with that. Like, but, I mean, I didn't even think he beat Provodnikov. I mean, when he got dropped, it was a nice, gritty, gutsy comeback and hanging in there. But he got the win. I didn't even think he really won the fight. But, okay, he got the win. But like you said, that was a long time ago at 140 pounds. I mean, not that much difference between 140 and 147, but he's 37 years old now. He's never done anything as a welterweight. And who's his win? Again, the Provodnikov fight, who else is I didn't think he won that fight. Let's say he did. He was down twice hard. Who else has he beat? I mean, he was down 6 times against Pacquiao. He was down, Spence, blew him away. I mean, so a guy that gets dropped all the time, can't punch, had been fighting sporadically in recent years and 37 years old. Now, did Conor Benn poleaxe him? He did. And to me, that was better than what Conor Benn has done over the last few fights, because even in the Vargas fight, even though it was the first round, Vargas didn't go down. They stopped it quick. He didn't drop Formella. He didn't drop Granados. Granados doesn't bring back any offense either. There's another guy. He has no pop. He doesn't bring really any real offense, any kind of sophisticated offense. So what I'm saying is, I'm suspicious here. I am suspicious. I mean, Benn, he can go in there throwing what he wants when he's getting no resistance. He might get by. I think I would even lean towards him against an Avanesian, because I think people overrate Avanesian. But, you start putting him in with the other top 10 welterweights. Like people want to put him over Stanionis. Now, he punches harder than Stanionis, even with the guys he's been in with. But you know what Stanionis would do? Stanionis would back him right up, and he'd be working the body, and Benn wouldn't be able to do anything. And I think he'd end up taking Benn out. And he's not the only guy. I mean, it's a good segue into another fight, because that was a debate. Now, he doesn't bring any power either, but Cody Crowley really stepped it up. He didn't impress me at all before Saturday night. I mean, I think it's worth mentioning now, because he's also a welterweight, and that was in the debate. Abdukakarov was a legit top 10 guy who hadn't looked as good in recent years, but was on a good run for a while. Like when he took out Minucci, when Minucci was highly regarded in the top 10. Now, that's a long while back, and he faded since then. But that was a big knockout at the time. And, he's got the win over Collazo. Collazo is always a tough out. Crowley, who to me just couldn't punch at all going into that fight and was a boxer. He comes out and Abdukakarov rocks him early in the fight. I mean, legitimately rocks him, and fights in an aggressive manner the whole fight. Got dropped, and went right back to work. And I thought he dominated the fight. I mean, I thought Crowley dominated the fight. I was not expecting that at all. I didn't think anything of Crowley really before that. I just thought he was a soft-fisted boxer who was mediocre, and he beat a top 10 guy soundly. I mean, he clearly beat a top 10 guy, had to get up from the brief moment of adversity to do it. So that's a much better performance than what Benn's done so far. Now, it doesn't automatically mean maybe Crowley stays better than Benn, but he earned that. He earned a spot over Benn in the legit top 10, and Transnational did put him in at 8, which I agreed with. He beat a top 10 guy soundly, a clear performance. He stepped it up. He earned it. So he took a chance, performed tremendously against a guy that punches back. That's the difference here. He's in with Abdukakov, a guy who's got decent power, who throws punches back. And he did. And even though Crowley dominated, I mean, he wasn't in with a guy that wasn't resisting. So, Benn's not in with those kind of guys yet. And I don't think he's going to be in, because let's face it, Chris, you mentioned Broner, and Hearn seems serious about that to me. And what's Broner? Broner's a guy who doesn't punch. Now, believe it or not, Broner, when he does punch, even as a welterweight, even though he started at 130, his pop's not that bad, but he just doesn't throw, and he's not a one-punch guy. He's not going to knock out any welterweight with one shot. So it's not that kind of danger. So, yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know if there would be any way that fight could be made. I agree with you 100%. I mean, because Broner does draw ratings. I mean, so, I don't think they could pay the kind of numbers that Broner would want to go over to the UK, and if that would necessarily even be worth it to Hearn. But I see this going basically just the way you see it going. I don't think other people do enough. Hearn's he's not going to put him in with other people that punch back. I don't think that's going to happen. And he's just going to wait until that welterweight landscape, which is too tough for Benn right now to really take a chance. He's going to wait till some kind of alphabet belt is freed up against a soft opponent who's not that big of a threat. And then he's going to put him in with that guy and say he's the champ. I mean, you could just see where this thing's going, and he'll be fighting in the UK doing that. And, some people are going to buy into it. Some people aren't. But, if it's making money, that's probably going to be enough for them. So I don't see the step. I mean, Avanesian, I think, would be far as they step up. I think he's got a shot there. I mean, I don't see him I don't see him ever going after guys like, Boots Ennis, Virgil Ortiz. And when people mention Benn in the same breath with those guys, that's nuts to me. I mean, that's nuts to me. I mean, he's not. And they like to put him he's better than Stanionis. I don't think he is. I don't think he would get by a Stanionis. And look, I mean, like Danny Garcia. I mean, Danny Garcia knocked out Samuel Vargas years ago. You know what I mean? So Cotter.
Yeah, and that was a tune-up too. It was a tune-up to fight Thurman, and everybody knew it. We didn't think much of it.
Right. No, where people were saying, "Hey, well, Danny Garcia knocked out that Samuel Vargas guy." I mean, nobody was saying that. I mean, that's what kind of made me chuckle. It's like now all of a sudden we're supposed to get excited by that. I was thinking the same thing. And then Danny Garcia blew away Granados, and he went 10 with Benn. So all those Conor Benn fans, man, Danny Garcia, he must be a much more formidable guy than you people thought. If he handled Adrian Granados a lot easier than Conor Benn.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, we're seeing some positive stuff from him to an extent, but yeah, it does feel like smoke and mirrors a little bit, or not a little bit. It does. It definitely does. So,
but he did get back to showing some power. He did get back to showing some power. I'll give him that. He got back to, but there was
Algeria was hurt. He was hurt. It wasn't just a little.
He was
knockdown.
hurt. I mean, no, that was a legit shot. I mean, he poleaxed him, and that was good because at least Benn showed. Because I was starting to say even the power might have been a bit of a mirage, but okay, the power there might be some real power there, but he's just just like you said, smoke and mirrors with he's just not in with any resistance right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Do we want to talk a little Donaire? And you did Did you cover that too? I was actually messing with.
No, I didn't. I jumped around a little, but yeah. So,
that's right. Because you were talking about the Crowley, but yeah. Not that there's much to talk about, but it is impressive at his age to look, to do what he's doing. But
right.
We kind of knew what the matchup was before it happened,
Right. Caballo, just, he looked terrible against Rodriguez. What was interesting to me was he's just young and he had a little pop on the way up. So I thought at Donaire's age, never know. But that's where Donaire is being amazing. He's at bantamweight, and then, to be able to do that in that power. But the opposition wasn't there. People shouldn't get too carried away. But I was impressed. It's still unprecedented for, a bantamweight, 39 years old, like him, knocking people out like he is. It really is. It really is. That is impressive. But yeah, you got to keep this Caballo matchup a little bit in perspective. And then Brandon Lee, I'm a big fan of. I mean, he's just right on track to me. I just don't think people are going to want to fight a Brandon Lee. To me, he's got the power, the size. He knows how to fight. He's young. He's one of the best prospects out there to me. I just don't. I think he definitely projects as a welterweight shortly, but he made 140 easy for this fight, so he's a dangerous man, I think, for anybody out there. I like him a lot. He's got good charisma himself. I think really he's a guy. It's good that he was on Showtime in this situation. I think he's really got to be featured more. I think he should be a top focused guy for Showtime. And if he's going to be on PBC cards, they're going to want to. I think they should be, featuring him heavily. So I'm a big Brandon Lee fan and believer. I think the sky's the limit for that guy.
Any other items you want to discuss before we get to, like we've been talking, another just completely jam-packed weekend of all sorts of fights that we won't be able to see all of them?
Yeah, better touch a little bit more on just. I did watch Katie Taylor. I thought she clearly won. Like you said, opposition wasn't that great, but I like her. She's a good fighter. I always enjoy watching her fights. Good hand speed and boxing skill, and she's willing to fight too. But she's in her mid-30s for a lightweight. I think some of the sharpness is starting to go off her punches. I did see that, and I think that could be trouble for her against a little tougher opposition at this point. So I think she might have a tougher time if the opposition steps up, like you see some of these other women fighting around 130, 135 pounds. And there are, we're getting where there's a lot of good ones. Alicia Baumgartner, of course, looked real good, showed that pop against Harper, and Michaela Mayer, I think we all agreed was really impressive in that last fight against Hamadouche. I think if there was 3-minute rounds, I have a feeling she's a fighter that'd be getting more knockouts. They're not fighting them right now, but Amanda Serrano's out there, and there's some tough fighters. Katie Taylor's a real good fighter. She's for real in that sense, but she might be starting to hit the downside. It might be tough for her if she gets in one of those big matchups now. Kind of agree with people that were saying that. I think they might be underrating her talent, but it just, I think she might be just losing a little bit of that sharpness, and it might be tough for her from here on out. I got a feeling. And then Bivol continues to disappoint. He's worth mentioning for that reason. The Salamov guy he was in with ended up basically for that level. He wasn't legit top 10, and he showed in with anything difficult, and in with that safety first, that kind of more modern amateur that you see. You see the Cubans do it. You see the Cubans and guys from the former Soviet countries with that, that jumping in and out with the jab. It's just, and again, doing it in the pros, it's just like they're conditioned to it from the amateurs and from that old scoring system. And when you watch those kind of guys bring it, and Bivol's become one of those guys, and he showed some power earlier on. People talk about Barrera, but even before Barrera, against some pretty tough guys who were kind of underrated, and you just don't see it now. The amateur, the jumping in and out with the jab, and he's torture to watch right now, the way he's fighting. And a guy like that, I mean, he's not looking as good. We've seen kind of guys who maybe they get a reputation of being a little bit avoided for a while when when they're doing this. And then the offense seems to shrivel up with those kind of guys as they get a bit older, and then they end up getting decisioned by somebody anyway. They get put in with somebody who throws a lot of shots and is aggressive, and they get out hustled or something like that. He seems like a guy that's headed for that soon. If he can't get some other big fight, like he's going to be in one of these fights with somebody that we're not thinking much of, but who throws a lot of punches, and he's going to get out hustled. Well, look, he had a pretty tough time with the Richards guy from the UK, really, to fight before this one, who was completely unheralded. So it could be coming, but it looks like I said on Twitter. I mean, really a almost comparable guy would be Andrade, but Andrade looks like George Foreman lately compared to Bivol. I mean, with a couple of knockouts, even if it's lower opposition. Bivol's in with lower opposition. I mean. At least Andrade got a couple of these guys. At least Andrade got Quigley out of there 2 rounds. Bivol's going the distance with these guys. So that was disappointing. And then just an old veteran. It was surprised to see Hank Lundy legitimately get blown away by Davis. That was a surprise. So what the heck? Even though Lundy's obviously past his best. And he has been stopped before, but he just had a durable performance against Zepeda. I agree with what everybody else said there, and Zepeda came back strong. So, Davis, I mean, again, with the alphabet stuff, Hearn will maybe overhype it. They're talking about positioning for alphabet belts and stuff, but just for the guy, it was, even though Lundy's 37, it was a good win getting him out of there like that. So it is at least worthy of mention, because then at least Davis deserves to be in a little better fight next time around.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that. I forgot about that Lundy fight. Didn't he hang him up too? Did he say he hung him up? I think I saw a post.
I don't know if he did, but it would definitely be time after that. At his age and getting stopped like that at this point. No need to go on, but it paid off for Hearn and company in Matchroom to bring him over to the UK for that one. So so that did work out for him.
So as far as this weekend, like I said, I mean, it's hard to spend a bunch of time on each one, and to be honest with you, some of them are just gonna happen. Hopefully they're more two-way competitive than some of them look on paper. Some of them are really competitive, and some of them are undercard, like I mentioned earlier. One that really stands out, though, is Michel Soro against Madrimov. So Soro and Madrimov. I like this fight a fair amount. Obviously Madrimov has a lot of – I mean, anyone now from Uzbekistan or Ukraine or whatever, and they have, some of them have still great amateur careers. Some of them are coming out a little earlier than they used to, just because that makes a lot of sense, because they're seeing the success of Usyk and Lomachenko and just in that region in general. 2 fights ago, I believe it was Eric Walker, that he definitely had a rough go at it. His last fight, he won fairly cleanly. I do remember, I know he scored a knockdown, or maybe 2, but I don't know. Madrimov, speaking of that leaping hook, and just leaping when you punch in general, Madrimov can take it to another level when it comes to that.
Right.
I've definitely noticed. Soro, he's a good quality fighter. I don't believe he's been stopped. He's been a pro for a long, long time. He doesn't really have a lot of, I'd say this is already like 2017-18, that Castano fight. That was it was a loss, but a split decision loss. And it got I remember it got tied up in that interim WBA stuff. and Castaño ended up getting screwed out of that, I believe, now that I remember. But he's been around for a long time. You know, he's got some draws. The Douglas fight, I mean, that seems like it was like 6 years ago or something like that. So he's been around for a while. We kind of know him. But he's a good fighter. He's definitely a good fighter. And I think at this stage, I like this fight. I want to see, you know, they have Madrimov on, you know, more of a fast pace, fast track, you might say. Can Soro give him a good run for his money and maybe even pull an upset here?
Yeah, I'm with you, Chris. I do agree. This is not a hipster thing. This really is a good fight that's under the radar. I'm on board with this one. And you're right. Madrimov he's the perfect segue because he is a guy that has lapsed sometimes into that amateur style I was just talking about, you know, where he jumped, you know, he's got the amateur pedigree, but he starts jumping in and out. Soro has been a really good underrated pro. I feel for at least like 5 years, like you said, even going back to the Antoine Douglas fight when Douglas wasn't ruined yet as a prospect and he held him to a draw. You know, when Glenn Tapia, of course, he turned out to be over the hill, but still he had won some fights since the Kirkland fight, and, you know, Soro, you know, blew him away when he was the underdog. That was really impressive. Like you said, he fought Castaño close to even, and, you know, we've seen how good Brian Castaño is, and he's got an excellent amateur pedigree. I think, you know, my question going into this one probably just is where I haven't even been more excited is just, you know, how ready is Soro, just in terms of he hasn't taken any beatings or anything, but just the activity level, you know, where's he at? You know, hasn't been as active as he had been in the past. I think, you know, with that, if he answers that question where in a positive manner, in other words, if this is the Soro, you know, was in it with Castaño and that we're used to seeing, I think he's definitely capable of pulling the upset in this fight because he's got a good offense. So, you know, when Madrimov is doing that amateur stuff, bouncing in and out, I mean, Soares can be active and hit him, and he can hit him with some authority. So I think if a good version of Soro shows up in this fight, he's definitely capable of pulling the upset. And he's quite a bit of a dog, a bit more than I would have thought. I was just checking on it before we went on, and I pull up again. He's up on DraftKings. He's plus 320. So I guess I would have to say, I mean, you know, am I going to write out and say he's definitely going to win? But I would say if this is the Soro I've seen in the past, and you know that version shows up, I wouldn't hesitate to put money on him here and go for the upset because I think that's I feel comfortable saying that's a good price on him. You know, so I like the fight. I'm with you. I think, you know, arguably it could end up being fight of the weekend, even with all this action.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm even seeing them on FanDuel plus 350, BetMGM plus 350 as well. So, yeah, I thought that would be somewhere in the 200s, maybe plus 185, plus 220 or something like that, plus 2 whatever. But, yeah that's a good price. I think that's a really good price. And that I think that's definitely worth you know, taking a flyer out. Well, we might as well just stay. Well, let's see. What else is on that card? What was it? It was, shoot. Okay, there.
I just took a fly. We talked ourselves into it. As we're speaking,
there
I
you
just
go.
took a flyer on Soro. I just took a flyer on Soro as we were speaking. So you started to make me think, yeah, it really actually is worth taking the flyer on that one.
I mean, I think so. Well, Ramirez and Gonzalez, you know, there's not much in that fight. It sure would be nice to have, you know, Zurdo, you know, get in there with it. This will get him a WBA light heavyweight eliminator. Let's see if they actually call it. But some interesting, the Esparza and Ortiz fight has a chance to really pop. I think the Lamont Roach Jr. and Rene Alvarado, that's the fight that I was kind of eyeballing there. That's pretty interesting, too. And like I said, there is a fair amount of, mismatches or whatever, stay busy fights, or maybe it'll be just a good TV fight. But I actually really like that Lamont Roach, Rene Alvarado, and I'm gonna. I don't know how much of a major upset it is or anything, but if Alvarado, this is the time to get a big win. You know what I mean? He's been around for a little bit. And then Lamont Roach, I just like this fight. I'm looking at it, plus 142, plus 175 for Alvarado. That's the highest I see at plus 175. And Roach, minus 240, 250 is the highest there. For me, that's a really interesting fight where it's kind of like, I'm not going to call it a crossroads fight per se, but I think that one at the end of the weekend could stand out as well.
Now, Chris, on that one, I do disagree with you a little bit. I think you're right in terms of matchup. It might be competitive, so it might end up being a competitive fight, even an entertaining fight. But where I just maybe disagree with you a little bit is I don't think either of those two guys are going anywhere. I mean, Alvarado's never really impressed me. I've never really been particularly impressed by Lamont Roach either. So for me, I think that's kind of like a golden boy putting two guys who aren't really going anywhere together. Now, you may be right. It may end up being, and the odds are close, may end up being an entertaining fight, but for me, that those guys just, neither of those two are going anywhere. So
that's fair.
I think you're.
And I didn't necessarily
I
mean like, man, the winner of this is going to get a big fight, but I think competitiveness, it could be a tight fight. But I agree with you as far as like, man, he wins this one, dude. He's top 5 or whatever, Yeah, that's a good clarification.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, right. You may be entertained by that one, and I'm not disagreeing with you. It might be competitive, but I don't, like, to me, I go even far as I don't think either of those two guys at this point, like, if people would be advocating for the winner of that to be legit top 10 level, I would say no. So that's just my thought on that one. But yeah, getting back briefly to, you mentioned Uneski Gonzalez and Ramirez. I liked Uneski Gonzalez. I thought he should have gotten that decision against Pascal. Lost a great tight fight against Shabransky when Shabransky was still fighting well and hadn't kind of been beaten up and lost it. But then, no shame in the sense that a very good fighter. I mean, Gvozdzik had probably his career best performance and blew away Gonzalez, and then you kind of just didn't hear from him again after that. And he's been fighting a little bit, winning, but just not real active. He's like 36 years old now. Ramirez has looked pretty good to me lately. I mean, he's got tremendous size, even for light heavyweight, even though he was at 168, he's got great size for light heavyweight, 175. I don't think it's a joke when he talks about moving up to heavyweight. He's actually talked about that a bit lately, even though I know it's one step at a time, but he's big. I don't think, and he is aggressive and will work the body. Like I've said about him a lot of times, strange thing about Zurdo Ramirez that I can never really think of another fighter like it is he's very, very effective with that body attack, and he can mount a vicious body attack, but his accuracy and the way he throws to the head is strange. He's a much better body puncher than anything else. So I would just think he'd have too much left for, like you say, alluded to, for Uneski Gonzalez at this point that, Ramirez is arguably maybe going to be about peaking, and Gonzalez has got to be past the best of what he ever had. And, he came from the Cuban amateur system and stuff, so where they have a lot of fights, even as an amateur. So I just don't see what he'd be able to bring at this point. He's going to be right there for Ramirez. Ramirez should be able to get him out of there.
Here's another prospect fight that, right when he came out, Richardson Hitchens, I heard a lot about him. Born in Brooklyn, so he had a little bit of hype behind him. He hasn't, the Mendez fight was a very competitive fight. I think that was his last fight. Other than that, though, hadn't really been, tested too much. And not to say that this is going to be just a major test or anything like that, but I feel like maybe an extra fight or two Hawkins has at least been in, as far as, being able to test him and whatnot. And I don't know. I haven't been all that impressed with Hitchens. I just really haven't. I as an amateur or as a prospect on the way up, and he's barely favored in this fight. I'm looking at it right now. Oh, it's funny because man, that's weird. I actually was looking at FanDuel, and they have it a tight fight. Plus 136 for Hawkins. But then I'm looking at some other. Yeah, I didn't realize that there is a plus 240 out there as well. What do you think of Richardson Hitchens? Like I said, as a prospect, I still got to see a lot more from him to get thinking that he's going to climb a ladder and whatnot.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. Neither of these guys has impressed me much. I was hoping for Hitchens' sake, he'd look a little look a little better against someone like Mendez. Hawkins never impressed me. He really didn't. He had that fight with Matias where he tried to bang with him a little bit and got blown away. I don't think he could do much else. He just, he had a couple of KOs before that, but just watching him throughout his coming up, Hawkins, I just didn't think he brought any pop and killed. But I'm with you. Hitchens hasn't been that impressive either. Mendez is a tricky veteran who can give you some trouble, but still, you would hope to be more impressive. And couple of decisions before that, not that inspiring. I think both of these guys are. That's why it's interesting. The odds are close because I do see it that way. So they're both kind of on the same level of prospect or non-prospect to me. So, obviously one of them is going to go on after this, and one of them is going to take a further step back. I would think, having watched them both actually quite a bit, because I was always curious, especially PBC, all the free cards and like what they're trying to do. So, that's one good thing is you got to know some of these guys that you wouldn't have known them otherwise. I think Hitchens is a little bit better with what he brings, so I would think maybe a decision for him. But they are pretty close. Odds make sense to me. I just don't. I'm not crazy about either of them like you, and Hawkins. I just haven't thought he was that talented. I almost thought it's not that he was a big name or anything like that, but I just even almost thought at the point when they had him in with Mateus that that was almost like a cash out for whatever level he had reached. Let's face it, even the guys at PBC and any of these promoters, deep down they know, and you see Top Rank just cutting guys and stuff. Now, there can be different philosophies like that, and pros and cons of both probably. But PBC, as we know, they have a different philosophy where Al Heyman likes to just keep staying with guys. And like you said, there are pros and cons to that. I can see the pros, I can see the cons. So I'm not saying that. And obviously Hawkins, he didn't fail against Matias and then get cut or anything, but now he's in with Hitchens, and he'll probably lose that too, and just be
he's not
around.
far from getting cut.
yeah,
As it's like, all right, here you go. Here's another chance. Let's see what happens. Then we may
that's
see
what they
goodbye.
do with PBC. With Top Rank, they're just going to say goodbye. And like I said, I'm not saying that's good, but it's a different philosophy.
Yeah, sometimes
PBC,
that works out better. Sometimes it's like, ooh, maybe you shouldn't have gave up on him. Like you said, there's pros and cons to all of it.
Yeah. What you just reminded me, a thought that popped in my mind. We didn't mention what happened, but I thought about that with the cutting guys. I thought, well, they just had a Jogba lose to Frank Sanchez, and since they've been cutting so many guys anyway, and they really haven't pushed the heavyweight series as much as you would have thought they would have when they started signing guys. I mean, why don't they just throw a Jogba in with Anderson at this point and let Anderson,
that'd be a good fight for him.
Anderson score, you would think, would get the win in that one. And, of course, Jogba has power, so it'd keep the fans' interest.
You see that, maybe.
I'm just saying, instead of just if they're thinking about cutting them, instead of just cutting them, how about putting them in with Anderson first? Okay, but then back to this weekend. Yeah, so I'm with you. Neither of these guys, to me, are real significant prospects, but I do think Hitchens looks a little bit better. So I agree with him being a slight favorite. I would think he should be able to get a decision in this one. Yeah,
and then, like I said, some of the main events, who really knows what Marcus Brown has at this point? It's not like Beterbiev's been like the most active guy. He's got that one really, really good win, and he just had, whether it's injuries, whether it's promotional stuff, he's just kind of been a stop and start type of guy. It does look like Dave Morrell Jr., they're looking to get him rounds. Fox is a guy that a little while back got stalked by Liam Williams, did go 12 rounds with Andre, so maybe they're kind of measuring stick. I think they're just trying to get him some rounds. So Parker and Chisora, the rematch that everybody wanted, right? Because it was like fight of the year. Okay, maybe not. Maybe I'm going overboard. I do like Chisora, though, like his personality. And I got to say, like, win, lose, or draw, that guy's resume is really, really deep. And, shoot, I mean, he gave Usyk a way better fight than Anthony Joshua. I mean, he was in that fight. He won, it was like a 7-5 fight, 8-4 fight or something like that. Chisora was definitely in that one. But, what I'm hoping is that this one's a little bit more fun to watch because the first one was a bit of a stinker,
I was kind of entertained by the first one. I didn't need a rematch, but kind of entertained. I thought Chisora was close. I mean, you're right with his personality, and since he comes forward, I mean, he's kind of one of those guys that is entertaining enough to watch. He keeps losing, but there's enough entertainment. You'll watch it. Then here, I mean, I am going to watch this heavyweights.
Right.
Talent-wise, Parker is far more talented. Should handle him easily. I liked it. That I was really interested with that trainer matchup in the first fight. You don't have that very often, but I was. Andy Lee had joined the Parker corner, and Buddy McGirt was doing one of his reclamation jobs with Chisora. And, Buddy McGirt is as good as anybody as a strategist out there in the corner. And I thought he did his job with Chisora. A lot of people thought Chisora won the fight, and McGirt had a game plan for him. And to Chisora's credit, probably because of the stature of McGirt, even though Chisora is a veteran fighter, where you would then sometimes see these guys not listening. I mean, he listened to instruction. I enjoyed watching that. And he almost pulled off the upset. So I'm not completely counting him out. I'm not sure exactly what the trainer situation is going into this fight. But Chisora did listen. And like you said, he did give Usyk a pretty decent fight, especially when, and you do have to look at it. I mean, Usyk ended up beating Joshua. So, a little more credit to Chisora there. Chisora's got to be in shape. You see these moments people make fun of, but there's truth to it too. I mean, he starts breathing hard or starts gassing, and he can't afford that. Parker lets people off the hook with his lack of aggression. I mean, when Parker opens up, he does have good boxing skill and offensive skill, and he is a competent boxer, but his problem is the inactivity in the ring. He just doesn't throw, and he was doing that in a lot of spurts against Chisora, and his corner had to get him to pick it up. And when he finally picked it up, I think it was enough to make it clear he secured the decision. Some people didn't agree. And people I respect. I mean, there were people I respect who thought Chisora won that fight. I thought Parker did enough to win. I don't think we needed a rematch, but first fight was close. I mean, and I'm with you. It wasn't like a spectacular slugfest, but there were things.
But it was
about
competitive.
The fight I did.
And I'm not going to complain about competitive fights.
Yeah. So I don't know. What Hearn here. We didn't. I really do think even now we didn't need this rematch, but I'm going to watch. There was enough intriguing about the first fight, but I would think that Parker, as was the case in the first fight, Parker's still just got too much talent for him. I mean, Parker's just on a different level of talent, even though the first fight was close, and he should be able to do whatever he needs to do to win in there. And Chisora's got okay pop, but even though he got the calm out there with basically a couple of shots, generally his game is not, he's not a one-punch puncher type guy. I mean, he's big. He's got power. I mean, he's not underpowered or anything. He's got power as a heavyweight. He comes forward, but he's not generally outside of just a normal heavyweight, some ferocious puncher that's, like Parker's got to worry about getting caught by some monster bomb. I mean, it can happen at heavyweights, and Chisora punches hard enough, but Parker does have a chin. And I don't think, and he knows how to box, so I don't think that's going to happen. So I would think Parker should be able to decision him, and if Parker fights all the way to the top of his game, you would think a late stoppage is possible. But if McGirt's in there with him again, I'd like to see what kind of strategy McGirt comes up with, because he always comes up with something. So and he did train Chisora for that last fight. Yeah,
I like Parker by decision on that one too. I did see, how photos can be misleading, especially when people have they're not training or anything like that. Sometimes you can see someone right when they're done training and they just lost 6 pounds while they're training and their body looks good. Or sometimes, like for instance, when you go swimming and you swim a long time, you get out of the water, your body's going to look a lot better than before you went in. That's just kind of a natural thing. But I did see this photo that I was like, God, I hope Chisora's in shape. It could have just been the angle and how he was kind of squatted down, but I was like, oh, that could be breathing heavy, like you said. And then, by the way, who's ever listened in the browser, 90 seconds, that will cut off. You can call 646-381-4990. That's 646-381-4990. You have over a minute to call in. The browser cuts you off. We do still have an hour left of the live, after the live stream, just so you guys know. Now we go from one rematch to another one. And this one was kind of a surprise one because Tommy Fury got hurt. But Jake Paul and Woodley Part 2. I'm glad Amanda Serrano is getting some love off of this. I do like that Jake is, promoting her, and that's cool because, I've always liked her as a fighter, and women's fighting in general. Any kind of push you can get, I'm all for. I'm not bought into this one. The Tommy Fury one where you're facing a boxer who's been around the sport but hasn't been around the sport quite like his brother was and his father and all that. But I get why they put in Woodley. I know he was training as a potential backup. But I got to say, the second time around, it just doesn't do a whole lot for me. Now, hey, if there's a good fight, I'll watch the replay someplace on Daily Motion, what would be at that point legally, not necessarily live stream it illegally, but it's just, I'm kind of out on this one. It's kind of like been there, done that. I know Woodley, put Jake on the rope or kind of almost through the rope, but he got hurt not long after that. What are your thoughts on this one? I'm not, maybe it's just because there's such a collage of stuff. It's just kind of like, oh, by the way, Jake Paul's fighting.
Chris, I see it the exact same way. You know, I've been actually somebody who, even though I'm an old school boxing guy, I've been okay with the Jake Paul thing. I mean, people know who he is. It brings entertainment. I thought it was cool that he wanted to box and not do MMA, just in terms of for the popularity of boxing. I thought the way the stuff was packaged, even the first fight with Woodley on Showtime, I even surprised myself. I ended up buying in and enjoying myself. But we're getting pay-per-viewed out here. I've been saying it. You know, you could try to say this is a different market, but now
part of it. Since
it's not all
October, we've been getting just pay-per-viewed. We've been getting hit over the head with pay-per-view since October.
Yeah, we're getting pay-per-viewed out, and I go back to, I think, the year, I'd have to look, but it was around 2015. This is worth bringing up again because I think it is it's getting back to an old problem with the sport. You know, like the way I saw it, kind of generally the way, and it fits in with kind of this Paul pay-per-view, even though some people argue, well, it's a different thing. But, hey, it's Showtime putting it on, you know, and Showtime obviously does a lot of boxing still. But, you know, you got to around 2015 or so, you know, when HBO was still in there and show. I mean, they just started running more and more pay-per-views, and, you know, boxing fans were subscribed to premium cable because that's where they were seeing their boxing. You know, for me, there wasn't even any charm to it. I mean, ESPN's Friday night fights were basically garbage. They'd been for a long time at that point. I mean, it was just the lowest of the low. So, you know, I didn't even count that as really being a free – it was a free TV series, you know, basic cable, but it just didn't count. The only significant fight, they had thrown on Areola Stavern 2 around that time, which was a surprise, but was good. But that was the exception, not the rule. You just that was like a dinosaur, like that came out of nowhere. You know, the extinct species that popped up out of nowhere. But getting my point is, kept running the pay-per-views. Then the regular HBO and show cards were getting worse and worse. And you know, the ratings started dropping, and the pay-per-view buys started going to the tank. Let's face it. The exceptions were, you know, Floyd Mayweather. And then the boom that was Mayweather-Pacquiao. Because, remember, Pacquiao's pay-per-view numbers had even started to tank. So, you know, his individually after being strong initially. So, you know, or had built up to being strong. So then everybody just got in this thing where they couldn't make any money on other pay-per-views, but they didn't want to pay for the fights on regular HBO or regular show. So they were all just waiting for, you know, what's the next, you know, Mayweather Pacquiao thing going to be. And, you know, you had Mayweather McGregor then did it like that. But, you know, then things were shriveling up, and then PBC finally said, I think intelligently, look, we got to get something out there where people can see it, build this base back up, you know, before we start doing this pay-per-view thing again. And, you know, they did it to a degree, but a little prematurely started going heavy with the pay-per-view. And, you know, like you said, DAZN's talking about it now. And you know, Top Rank just had one with PBC. So now, you know, we're getting bombarded with them, and they're talking about more to come. What I'm saying is, to me, we've already seen this movie. It's not going to work, okay? So this, in other words, this model that we're drifting back into right now, we already know doesn't work. So they're going to have to face the music soon that you're drifting back into a model that doesn't work, and you might not have the next Mayweather-Pacquiao right at your fingertips. So, you know, why I'm talking about that with the Jake Paul, I have to draw the line.
Yeah, those guys don't have Oscar either. You know, with
right.
Floyd and Manny had Oscar to fight. A lot of these guys don't have a name like that beyond Canelo, you know.
And with respect to Floyd Mayweather, the way I see the Mayweather success story a little different than some other people spin it now too. I see it the way you did. Like, Floyd Mayweather was a guy, a good fighter going along, wasn't drawing any real big ratings or pay-per-view numbers for that time period, you know, was okay here and there. And, you know, Gotti was a pretty big name at that time. And you know, he even had one with Gotti that did okay and blew him away.
Zab,
no doubt about that.
You know, the Zab Judah one was good.
You know,
but it took him a while to get
there.
Was doing,
Right, it was doing okay, but like when they say that, I think the key to me then was because Oscar De La Hoya, he went back to '92 Olympic exposure, kind of like the tail end of where you're really arguably, I think that probably would be a good point to draw that line. The last Olympics where you really were getting that old school boxing exposure. Like I remember the amateur. Think about this now. Compare, like if you had this now, like the amateur Oscar De La Hoya was on the cover of Rolling Stone. I mean, we're not talking about the pro being marketed. We're talking about U.S. Olympian Oscar De La Hoya boxer, on the cover of Rolling Stone, which, this is when Rolling Stone was big. So magazines were big. You got to go back 30 years. So what I'm getting to with the Floyd was, Floyd needed that door open to me. Like he got the shot of fighting Oscar De La Hoya, I think what you said. And then that fight did a huge pay-per-view number. And then to me, like Floyd Mayweather ran with it. It's completely to his credit. Like, he took that audience that saw him, and then he built on it, was a great marketer, great fighter, and he ran with it and made himself even bigger. But, like, I felt like he kind of needed that. Like, he needed Oscar to give him that shot, and then he ran with it. But, like, I feel like my own personal, I feel like if he never would have gotten the Oscar De La Hoya fight, I don't think it would have built that big. I mean, we'll never know, but I don't think it would have. But I think to Floyd Mayweather's credit, it's like somebody when they get a big opportunity. He made the absolute most of it and made himself into his own star from that point. So, we're still waiting. Like there's hope in it, and it may not happen. I mean, this is like lightning striking, and when that's their whole business plan strategy, because that's what I feel like they're doing with Tank Davis, and they almost kind of don't deny it. Like, you heard a little talk about it with Errol Spence, who I love as a fighter. But then, look, Errol Spence, he got in the accident, and then he got the eye injury. So, obviously those are things that happen, but that kind of threw that plan to the side. But what they were saying about Errol Spence, like the pay-per-view people, Showtime, everything, like kind of this idea like when they build a baseball stadium with small attendance to make the ticket seem more in demand. Like, we're just going to have him on pay-per-view only, so it seems like an event, and it's going to build from there. I don't know. I mean, it's just like that small baseball park thing. I mean, sometimes that works, but sometimes it doesn't. In other words, sometimes just not that many people are seeing you. You know what I mean?
Well, in Canelo, it's not like Canelo's still at 160, so that would be the big fight to build to. That fight's not going to happen. You know what I mean? He's already going to be at light heavyweight anyway, So I think that was actually their plan. I think that was actually their long-term plan, but that's not going to happen.
Right. But what I'm saying is, like, I don't think – you're right, and that's a good example. Like, Spence would have been Canelo, and maybe – but see, even Gervonta Davis doesn't really necessarily have that guy unless you think maybe that Ryan Garcia social media following things for real. He's on the zone, so we can't really test those numbers, in terms of viewing. But like what I'm saying is, like, I don't know I don't know what the numbers are. I'm not going to claim I know, but let's just say that they're 200,000. Like, I don't know if Gervonta Davis just being seen by $200,000 on a PPV every 6 months is going to automatically make him a Pacquiao, Mayweather type star. I mean, no. And I think that they really honestly are thinking that's what they're hoping for, and that may not happen. I mean, I don't know if he's already 27. I mean, I don't know if that happens. With that style. I mean, where then they can
I think they're probably pretty realistic that they know they don't have an Oscar to go fight. Ryan Garcia clearly is the biggest fight right now. Lomachenko's a solid name. But I also think that it's kind of like what they did once in a while with Barrios and Barrera, where they can make a little money on these events, and it'll help Showtime's budget too. They can make a few million, and this is kind of – it's funny because I got a message last week, and I made a list of all these pay-per-views that did under 300,000, some of them under 200,000 that had big names in them. Oscar De La Hoya did two – pay-per-views that were in the 200,000 range. Geraldo Hernandez and whatnot. But it was just a different climate, Trinidad was there. I mean, a lot of Mosley. There was a lot of fights in front of them, and it is a little bit different. I really think it is. They can make some money off it, so this is what we're gonna do. You know what I mean? It's just like a.
I think you're right.
Not,
I mean, that was
not a far-ranging plan per se.
I think you're right. That was like that circa. That's the year I keep pulling out because it's when I felt like PBC felt correctly the need to do something different, and then HBO got out a few years later. So like, I'll just keep saying like circa 2015. I agree with you. I mean, that's what they were doing circa 2015. You're right. They just, for their budget, they thought, well, we got to make these pay-per-view, and it makes our budget, just enough to work. But you're right. It's not about getting anybody exposed. It's not about a long-term. And eventually that spiraled into the gutter for them where it just didn't work anymore. And I think it's going to happen again. So, like, I think, like, the Jake Paul, I'm with you. Like,
yeah, let's get back
I was
to
one
Jake
of the
Paul.
guys, like, who was saying, I'm going to buy the Jake Paul anyway. And I felt the same exact thing with you on this one. On short notice, I'm not saying they had a better option, but Paul Woodley, too, with a most likely undertrained Woodley, it just doesn't do it for me. I mean, and with the undercard, it's not good enough. And I'm like,
no,
maybe I break down at the last second or something, but I can't see breaking the wallet out for this one. I can't. I mean, with everything else, I mean, I was already kind of reluctantly saying, even though I know darn well it shouldn't be pay-per-view, I mean, they're going to give me that Ortiz-Martin, and it's all heavyweights, and it's going to be at a quote-unquote discounted price, with the 45 or whatever it's going to be. I'll probably on New Year's night. I mean, I'm probably going to get that, but then I'm looking at it like you. I'm like, you can only get abused even as a hardcore boxing follower.
Yeah, that's
so
a
much.
perfect Fox fight too. Ortiz Martin, sign me up for that on a Fox fight. That'd be great. Be all right, cool. That'll be a good scrap. We know that. Like entertainment.
Yeah, it would have been a perfect Fox card, and I think it would have been a Fox card. It's just that they're doing the calculations just like you said. Now, even with Fox, they're saying, we can't get enough advertisers to even make paying Ortiz and Martin and that whole card worth it. We're not going to do that anymore starting in 2022. I mean, I think Keith Idek's real credible. He wrote for the North Jersey papers. I like him a lot as a writer, because I think it looks like he's already right. I mean, he said this, 2-3 weeks ago, and people were kind of looking at it like, where are you getting that from? But I think he's right. And, Showtime owns Boxing Scene, CBS, Viacom, Showtime. So they do PBC. So it's not like he's some anti-PBC crazy out there. He said 2-3 weeks ago on Twitter, Fox is out. Porter's doing DAZN commentary. Martin and Ortiz are pay-per-view. In other words, Fox not going to give you a Fox or an FS1 card anymore starting in 2022. And, it almost does fit. Like, you got Milnicki.
Oh, he's saying it was just pay-per-view on Fox?
Yes.
That's what he's saying? Oh, okay. I didn't hear that part.
2022.
Okay.
2022.
Yeah. So
yeah. He's saying
they picked up the option just to make a little bit of money on pay-per-views is what he's saying, basically?
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah. And he's saying that, which I would tend to believe. He's saying, look, Al Heyman knows what he's doing too much. He's too smart. He's too powerful. If Sean Porter is popping up on DAZN on commentary, and again, this is not an anti-PBC guy, quite the contrary. He's saying,
he's
Heyman
fair.
gave the
He's very fair.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, for all we know, the way boxing stuff works, I mean, that might have been like Al Heyman saying that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, I mean, it could have been said, because to me it's making sense. Like, I thought it was nonsense before Keith said it, but like, there was a little bit of rumor saying Milnicki is going to be the last Fox card. And, it was a weird one, Christmas night, 2021. And then we've got a week later, literally, we've got Ortiz Martin, a typical Fox card on pay-per-view for a discounted price. So that kind of looks like, to me, the circumstantial evidence of what Keith Idek says looks like it's probably reality. So,
and when you read their quarter reports, they were making money on those pay-per-views. So they put it right in there.
Yep.
So, I wouldn't doubt that. I hadn't heard that only pay-per-views. I hadn't heard that part. But the more I think about it, it's like, Yeah, maybe that will be the case. I mean, ultimately we'll find out. But because the other rumored fight that we hear about is supposedly a discounted pay-per-view as well. So, yeah, we'll see how that works. But, yeah, Eidik is a very fair reporter just in general. We like to, we talk about Jake Donovan and a variety of other, well, not that variety, but, at least some solid, consistent, I guess that's the thing, consistent reporting. So I think that is, I think that's fair. Any other items before we get you out of here, sir?
No, I just agree with you, Chris. I'd say, like, you talk about, like, Jake and Keith. I mean, I look at them like, it doesn't mean there aren't others out there, but you correctly mentioned them. Like they're like real writers, you know what I mean?
Right.
They're not like
they're looking to get it right. They're not worried about what side this back up.
Right. They're like real writers. They're like real reporter writers. So, you can usually take that stuff seriously. Like, yeah, that's like your old classic journalistic type standards a little more. So, that's what I think. And Keith was the one that said that. He's the only one that said it about the Fox, and he's the only one that said it about the Porter. But, I'm looking at it here. We're 2 weeks left in the year, and I'm like, that looks like it might be accurate. I mean, Sean Porter popped up on DAZN doing commentary, and, Fox, you have 1 week the last week of 2021, it's on regular Fox on Christmas night, and 1 week later, the first night of 2022, it's a pay-per-view on a fight that nobody would have thought would have been a pay-per-view. So
yes,
you got to really wonder.
It doesn't matter if it's half the price or not. It's still, it's like, no thanks,
Yeah, it shouldn't be. And even for the most hardcore nut, and I've gone through, I got to admit, I've been up and down in my boxing following life where I'll legitimately like go on a boycott, like for the reasons we're saying, and hold to it. Like really, for a long period of time. But I've also been on the other end where I'm like, I just want to enjoy boxing, and I like even sometimes some of these characters, even if it shouldn't be a pay-per-view, and I'm buying it, and I've gone on those streaks. So I was kind of opening up the purse strings doing that, but I'm with you, before I go, like Jake Paul, I'm like, not with the Woodley rematch with all these other pay-per-views. And then I saw, you kind of teased it, so it's worth throwing out as I wrap up, Thurman, Barrios, I mean, that, and that fits with what we're talking about. I mean, that's late January talking about a pay-per-view. This can't sustain. It really can't. It hasn't in the past, and it can't now. I mean, things have even changed more. So, and you've got less
it's short money
to build on.
It's definitely short money.
Yeah,
and that's been boxing's issue for the longest time.
Yeah. So I don't know where it all ends up yet, but that's why I mentioned at the start when we were talking that Top Rank's still throwing stuff out on regular ESPN. The way things have shifted, I mean, that might be the last ditch attempt at getting some broader exposure for the sport, as long as they keep with that. But they're still announcing stuff, so I guess they're going to do it at least for a while. But we'll say I do think Morrell and Fox is a mismatch. I mean, Liam Williams can't stop any higher level guys. He stopped Fox, like you said. Andrade went to a decision with him, but I think it's a mismatch. Morrell's for real to me, but again, this is a Fox headliner, and not good. Fits kind of what we're saying as we're wrapping up 2021. I mean, that's just not good. It's just not. I mean, Morrell's for real, but the matchup is just garbage. It's just garbage. So, and that's Fox getting stopped by Liam Williams at 160 pounds. Now he's fighting Morrell at 168.
Yeah.
That's the difference. I mean, because Fox is lanky, thin guy. I mean, it looks
like they're
good.
Just trying to get him some rounds. Here's some rounds.
Yeah,
get some rounds in.
And I don't think this one will go rounds. I think even though Morrell's not that aggressive, he can get over.
But he is more aggressive than Andre. You're right. He does look to not get you out of there.
Yeah, he'll get an overmatched guy out of there. So I think that's a bad headliner. That's going to be a mismatch, and that's about it. We got a lot to watch this weekend. But I'm with you. The Jake Paul thing, I kind of was liking it. He was an underdog against Tommy Fury. That made it interesting. Fury been boxing. But this underprepared Woodley, not going to do it because Jake Paul wasn't close to knocking him out. So I think, he might just get maybe an easier decision this time. But, I mean, what's that really going to do for us? Not much. So, and it's not good enough of a card all the way around. So, not at all. Not a good one. Not a good one in the midst of the pay-per-view bombardment.
Well, either way, enjoy the weekend. We'll definitely be back next week to talk it through.
Yep. Thanks for having me as always, Chris. Have a good night.
Yep. Have a good one. I'm about to go to Carcino. Gongora Richards. That is a tightly match. I've actually heard some folks in the UK talking about that. Plus 130 for Richards, plus 140, plus 115, plus 105. The highest is minus 177 that I'm seeing for Gongora. I think Gongora will win, but that's probably a good competitive fight. See, a lot of this stuff is going to be, like I said, the undercard stuff that's really going to give you the potential for a competitive fight because a lot of the main events are just kind of getting them out there. That's just sort of Parker's a close fight on paper to an extent. And also I mentioned that Jose Valenzuela. For a prospect level fight, I do like that against Dulé. Dulay's a good fighter. We've seen him multiple times. For a prospect level fight, I do like that. So that should be a good fight. Anyway, let's go ahead and bring in Carcino. Of course, Carcino for life, YouTube and Patreon and all that good stuff. Carcino, man, what's going on, buddy? How the hell are you, man? How's the weather down there anyway? How's the weather? Are you getting some of this,
man. Just glad
to be here, some of this tornado stuff?
Yes, I am.
Tornado stuff too? Golly, it's lightning like crazy out right now. I feel like we're in July.
Man, it is crazy out here. I'm looking at it like I can't even believe what's happening.
Dude, 5 days ago it snowed 12 inches. And basically the snow's almost gone. And it literally on Friday snowed 12 inches. Today it was like a high of 57. It's melted a bunch of it, and now it's, just raining cats and dogs. And the wind's picking up. It's supposed to get up to like 70 miles an hour wind and shit. That's crazy, man. It's December, too. This is December. Like, what the hell, man?
Yeah, I've been in the house working all day, man. I had to make up for the whole birthday weekend thing, so it was just, like, crazy. All the news.
Yeah, I bet. Happy birthday.
Around. Oh, thank you. This news and everything that's flying around here. Like, today, it's been like a whole Twitter war going on with Leonard Ellerbe. Like, if people knew how much Leonard Ellerbe don't even talk in real life, this is what it's funny now, because he's like the quietest guy in the world. He really doesn't, used to never do interviews, really, didn't really speak that much. He's a very nice guy. Now it's entirely like he's got to be the face because Floyd's not there. So Leonard,
he's very active on Twitter now. You're all right. The last year or so, it's been a lot more active. Him and Eddie Hearn are like the most active guys on Twitter now. It's like, damn, that's all they do is sit on Twitter all day.
Eddie's always been that guy.
That's true. That's been him. Yeah. We're used to that.
Right. So right away, Eddie was used to being on there, and seeing Leonard Ellerbe come on there, he normally would retweet something or make one post and be done. Now he's fighting with fans. he's arguing with people in boxing, like media, and people who's not even here. And all about pay-per-view numbers and everything else. And I'm like, man, this is crazy this week. This whole week's been crazy. All because Terrence Crawford called out Errol Spence. A lot of this is happening. I'm like, Errol Spence is not really represented by Leonard Ellerbe at all. So
yeah, no, I didn't even know that had anything to do with it. I thought it was just because, you know, people are looking for Tank to fight someone in the top 5 next fight.
Oh, see, that's the thing, is that they're crying about how Tank doesn't get the respect and how you guys really respecting Tank and the way he's not on the pound-for-pound list and you know, disrespectful. This guy put it on the line every night. It's not about that. It's who you're fighting. Like, I mean, really, it's just Pedraza, like somebody else stated, and now I agree 100%. It's been soft town. And, like, before this, he was fighting Rolly. Does Rolly even have 15 fights? I mean, Rolly.
I was so glad when Rolly got thrown off that card, to be honest with you. I was so happy when that Cruz came back on. I was like, yes, dude. Thank God. Rolly already lost. Rolly shouldn't have been in that spot anyway. I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. Yeah, I agree. I think that will be. They'll fight in 2022 sometime. I'd have to agree with that.
They're talking about a spring fight with Tank. Once again, because Tank is his mandatory, so he can force. He's like, I can.
Oh, that's
force.
right. Yeah.
Right.
That's
so
right.
He forced the fight the first time, and they pulled it because of this legal thing. So once he take that over, he's like, Tank will have to give up the belt or fight me in the spring. Because he's like, that's why I made the fight happen, because he's in my division. It's my mandatory, and I can force them to, you know, they either got to fight me or else. So that's it. So I really didn't. I get it, but I can see why Floyd was like, all right, cool, Rolly it is. So Rolly's a bigger guy, but I think this was a better fight for Tank. Because this guy doesn't jab and cruise. He just comes right in like Mike Tyson. But I like Tyson did at least throw a jab. But he made Tank uncomfortable a little bit by fighting on the run and moving and using the ring. Something Tank could do back when he was younger, but now he's normally been walking guys down. But his last 2 opponents that was of note was Leo Santa Cruz, who was fighting out of his weight class. So that really
he fought well in the fight, though, I'll say that. 130 is not Leo's weight, but he fought good. He fought good.
Yeah, I mean, everybody fought good. I mean, Gamboa fought good.
Barrios, that's a good point, yeah. Barrios was up on the card.
Fought great. He was losing. Like, some people thought he was losing the Barrios fight, and Barrios was weight drained. Right, he was weight drained to take the fight. So he came in there weight drained, so he was like not going to fight at that weight class. He was completely drained of weight to make weight for that fight. But we
knew he was going up, that's for sure.
Yeah. So he made weight, did the fight anyway, and the fight was close. So Tank is not like blowing these guys out of the water. You know, a lot of these fights are very competitive. And yeah, he got the stoppage in these fights, and I was impressed. He got the stoppage over Barrios, even though Barrios was, you know, drained and everything. I was like, man, he landed some good shots. He fought really well. I thought he looked really good in that fight. This fight, I felt like he was looking good in his spots, and I said, well, this is the kind of fight he can win. The other guy doesn't jab, so you can dictate the pace all night long. You can matador him. You know, start your offense. You just got to be able to deal with his punches, and he was just a little too small. That guy Cruz was too small for him. But when he hurt his hand, he wasn't able to adjust, and he lost those rounds, which made the fight close on the scoring card. So it's the same thing with Danny Garcia and Errol Spence Jr. Errol got like a headbutted. They headbutted each other, and it really affected Errol. And Errol kind of like laid back all the way from and gave up like rounds 9, 10, 11, and 12. I was like, my goodness, Danny Garcia won all those rounds just by being active. And I'm like, Errol was just trying to get through the rounds. And people missed that. because he was so dominant early on in the fight that everybody just totally forgot about what Danny Garcia did at the end of the fight and actually made the fight close. It was actually a 7-5 fight. When it was
I didn't see it 7-5, but
yeah,
I didn't see 7-5, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, he swept those last rounds. Errol did not do anything in those last rounds. He gave those rounds away because he felt like, I'm up big. Let me go ahead. And, yeah, it wasn't like a 7-5 fight, but if you score it and go back and score the fight, you're going to say, well, it's either 8-4 or 7-5, even though Errol won. But these last rounds were all won by Danny Garcia. And I'm like, that's only because something happened after Errol got the headbutt. He totally shut down. And even in the post-fight, he just like, I'm not ready. I'm going back to this. I'm definitely going to train some, get back because, I didn't feel like myself. And he was saying that, like, his conditioning, he was going back to the other old ways, his old strength and conditioning coach. He tried to do it himself, and he think he lost something in doing it. So he wanted to go back to his old strength and conditioning coach. And at that point, I knew he was never thinking about fighting Terrence Crawford. And the only way it was going to happen if something like this was to happen, where they make someone the mandatory, because the mandatory got beat last week for the IBF. So now it's like, well, he would have been the mandatory. And I think today the IBF would have made Terrence Crawford the mandatory, I think. I'm not mistaken.
You think IBF's going to do that? It's very rare.
Yeah.
It has happened, though. It has happened before, but it's very rare that happens. Because they got that dumb freaking champions are generally not ranked, which is always the stupidest thing. But the sanctioning belts, they don't rank other champions, which is always just ignorant, But they can do it. It's legal, but they generally don't,
Well, my thing is, I feel that in this instance they should. It should be enforced. Because you're telling these champions, look, this is the big fight. This is the money. The IBF and the WBC need to be on board because for them, this is your payoff. This is your big money. You're going to let your big money fight go down the drain. Because you were doing this and pampering to these champions before, it cost you money. You're sanctioning fights and getting paid on these little meaningless fights instead of making events that you can get more money for your sanctioning fees and everything else. These are the fights the fans want to see. You could possibly have a trilogy here. And you better get it now before, it's too late and the people don't want to see it anymore. Because we're almost at the point where somebody's going to lose. And then no one's going to really care about it anymore, and it's going to lose the weight. I remember Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua. People watch the fight, but it doesn't have the same, impact.
It's a great action fight, but it is different. It is a little different. There's no doubt about it.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Before, this was going to be the biggest heavyweight fight, period, ever. Now that's going to be Tyson Fury versus what? Usyk? Because now it's like, okay, if one of them gets beat, it don't matter. They get beat all the time. Well, we'll get a good fight. We'll tune in and watch it, but it won't be as massive because guys have been losing. When Pacquiao fought Mayweather, everybody wanted to see what it looked like, but no one, the people who really thought Manny could stop him, that group, once he lost and got knocked out by Marquez, that pizzazz was gone. Now it's Manny can be knocked out. So it's possible that he could lose.
Plus, that's a different fight.
Again.
You know, both those guys are so popular. You know what I mean? Because there was plenty of people that still thought, Pacquiao would do it, but it's not even. It's hard to compare that because those guys both could do such good numbers on their own. You know, for a while. So
yeah, I don't know who in the world actually truly believed that, because I don't think a Pactard was still rolling at that time. I think they.
Well, I've talked to many of them, dude. I talked to many of them. Got many direct messages and all that shit, you know. Unfortunately,
yeah.
I mean, I also made some money off them too. But yeah.
Definitely that. I mean, those were the few hanger-ons, but the ones around me, most of them kind of smarten up. But boy, it might just win. So.
What'd you think of Lomachenko now? Ever since taking that loss to Teofimo, he's had two really good, solid outings where he's looking pretty sharp, looking pretty healthy. If that shoulder was giving him issues or whatever, it kind of looks like he's lined up for a big fight. Whether we heard Bob Arum saying that he's going to try to get the WBO to call speaking of mandatories, call the mandatory. We'll see if that happens. But I thought Loma, bounced back nicely off these last two performances, and he's definitely geared up for a big fight here in 2022.
Well, I'm thinking Lomo, to me, he looked good. He looked a little flat-footed, a little bit more than I expected. He sat down on a lot of shots with Comey, something I didn't think was going to happen, but Comey gave him some problems a little bit in the fight. Like, he gave him some a little complicated, a little something to think about. So I think size and power would affect him if he gets in the ring with somebody that's got some physical, power to get his respect. But other than that, I don't really see too many problems for him. I'm trying to think, who could he fight?
Well, he's trying to get that Kambosos fight, like everybody else. But Bob was saying the WBO, but.
Yeah, and that's going to be difficult because Kambosos is, I think he's got to fight Devin Haney. I don't know if that's going to be mandatory that he got to do that.
Well, it's definitely not a mandatory because the WBC franchise doesn't have mandatories. That's why that belt is so bullshit. But yeah, he doesn't have to. That's what sucks about this, Garcia. These belts and the rankings, it just clogs stuff up so much. But I don't know. I think Eddie's going to go out of his way to overpay Kambosos and get Devin Haney a fight. That's what I think.
I mean, that can happen. That can actually happen because if he goes out his way and make that payment and get in that fight, right away he's already been told himself, okay, we're going to overpay and get you this mega fight, and for what? Because if you overpay and get that fight with Kambosos, you might not win. Might not win that fight. So I'm just saying, be careful what you ask for, because it might not happen. Kambosos is for real. And I'm like,
no doubt about that.
The thing is that you're going to have to box. He's got the style to beat him. Now, I'll admit that. He has the style to beat him. And that's the important part, is that he has the style. The rhythm, the way he fights, everything is perfect. And it's in line for what they want to do. Now, the major problem that they're having and they're going to have is stylistically, or if Devin wins, this is a great fight for him to boost up his resume. And then him and Teofimo could have that fight probably at a higher weight class. I think Teofimo just got to move up and just fight up there. But he definitely needs a corner. His father got to go. He had no instructions. He was ridiculously flat. It was terrible. It was terrible to watch. I've never seen a fight probably that bad with corner work. I mean, really, it was no instruction.
Oh, my God, dude. Talk about 7 different things. I mean, that shit was crazy, Garcia. I couldn't believe. I mean, I guess I could believe it, but I mean, he sits him down. It's like, hey, man, I told you to watch out for that. What are you doing? All right, calm down. Get him out of there. It's like, what are we doing here, dude? Talk about a range of emotion.
He was looking more like Rocky's trainer or whatever. What are you doing?
Exactly. What are you doing? You're attacking. Yeah, totally, dude.
He
was. He was making him look calm.
Right. It was. I felt bad for him because I'm like, man, this guy is just out there. You know, he's really just out there with nobody, and that was sad to see because I was like, man, this is a big fight for him because if he wins this, he can get to see, the Devin Haney fight because they've been trying to build that up like crazy over there on the zone. So this is a mega fight. They've been marketing, they've been building it up. And they forgot that they actually had to get through this fight. He walked out there and tried to just knock the guy out.
No respect at all for him.
No
respect.
I was like, oh, wow, he's coming in crazy. And sure enough, he went in there wild, and the fight was getting out of hand. And I told my buddy, I said, after the first round, I said, Phil Timo will come back. And he did. He got himself back into the fight. And I think some of the middle rounds, and he was doing really good. He was getting on a run, and he found his rhythm. And right then, he basically punched himself out. And them punches were, he was winning rounds, but he was taking way too many shots. He abandoned the jab. He had no game plan, it looked like. It looked like he had just zero game plan. It was scary to watch. I said, I cannot believe this is it. You know, like, I'm having a hard time following it. Because I'm just not believing that somebody would send their fighter out like this with so much on the line. And it was like panic time in the corner. Everybody's in panic mode. It was sad to see.
It really was. I felt bad for him.
But for a man who came in, Kambosos came in and took the fight. So I was happy for him because he fought the best fight ever. Being Pacquiao's sparring partner all those years paid off. He was used to seeing this style all the time, sparring Manny. So it was nothing he hadn't seen before.
Yeah, like you said, he didn't go in there with an established game plan. I mean, when he fought Loma and other guys, he was jabbing to the body. He was fundamental. He was looking for good shots. He was timing, doing everything Tio does. And he just headhunting, chucking, just jumping into his punches, looking like you said, just no respect. And it played right into Kambosos. And they're trying to play off that first knockdown. That wasn't some kind of just, I tripped or something knockdown. I'm not saying he was hurt, but that wasn't a run-of-the-mill knockdown. He got hit really hard on that. I don't know, man.
That was a big shot.
That was a real-deal knockdown.
But he took some of those early on because Kambosos was like trying to time him because he's like, okay, this guy's coming in. So he was trying to counter him a lot in that round because he was just coming in without a jab. He was trying to take Kambosos' head off. And I'm like, man, this guy is going to have a very hard day. Coming in swinging for the fences like this. This is not going to go the way he thinks. He has to pace himself. Because this is good, real brutal for him. I've always thought that they had a shot. I always thought that they had a shot of making it something epic, like making a real good fight down there because they got a lot of good fighters. So to make that kind of approach, to me, is acceptable. Like I can accept a lot of those fights and bouts that they have there. So I was like, well, I can accept those fights because they're going to actually, make a lot of good fights. Like you could have 3 or 4 fights like the lightweights back in the days, like when they had Ayala versus Tapia. Like all that division was hot at the time. Then they had all the small, fighters like Freitas and Casa Mayor.
Just round robin. Just a round robin of stuff,
Right, and so those lighter weights, I could see them, really taking over the sport again and having just a competitive division where guys are just getting in fights, and we're seeing that. And now it's like everybody was stagnated for a while, And, of course, COVID derailed a lot of things with promotions, and companies,
true,
and all of those different aspects of the game. You saw Canelo just still fight like 4 times in a year, and now his body is like physically tired. And
right? He's like, oh, shit, hold on. I'm not used to that.
Yeah, like he said, he's like, my body is just physically tired. People don't realize all the training that goes along with it. They just see the fight, and I'm like, man, this has been 4 times in a year. It's massive. So that's why I'm like, Floyd fought twice in a year, but 4 times in a year now? And I'm like, these are like 4 events.
Yeah, the full camps and all that. Yeah, 10-week camps and long, grueling camps. Even if one of them was Yildirim, the camp was the hard part, like you said.
Right. So he was physically just like, my body's tired. Like, he needs to, some rest. So he needs some time off. So I think he had told, I think Eddie Hearn and everybody else that, he's going to take about a month to just rest and get his body back. Before he goes back to hitting pads and all of these things. He's just like taking about a month of rest. My body's just physically, mentally exhausted, from all this training and fighting right now. So if I look at his year, though, I'm like, it's clear he was fighter of the year. I'm like, I don't see how anyone could really contest it. I'm like, he beat Billy Joe Saunders. He beat Caleb Plant, even though people thought Caleb Plant was some extraordinary human being. Like they really didn't believe in him anyway, but he was an undefeated fighter. And because he was an undefeated fighter, he was a champion. Even though everybody heavily picked Canelo to beat him, he had never been beaten. I mean, Billy Joe Saunders, same thing. It was something we never seen, but Canelo was stopping these guys. He wasn't going to the cards.
Yeah, no, right, yep.
And I'm like, he fought the guys in his way. He went up to weight classes. He fought them. And now because David Benavidez has come along to I guess, because he's beaten, I don't know who. He's supposed to be the man now. And Canelo's running from him. I'm just like, if he beats David Benavidez, what does it do for Canelo? I mean, I would love to see the fight, but it does nothing for him. So I'm like, this is great for David Benavidez, but David Benavidez is
it is great. No, it's kind of like every year there's a new. Oh, Canelo hasn't faced him though. It seems like every new year there's a new, and it's like, well, Benavidez, that's his own fault, man. He missed weight. That's why he lost his belt. That's on him. That's not. You can't sit there and blame Canelo like he's supposed to hold his hand on the scale and check in with him the week of the fight. Be like, hey, how's your weight doing? That's on him.
Yeah, and then David. The thing about it is, David would lose that fight only because David is very easy to hit. See,
I think it'd be entertaining. It'd be a fun fight to watch, but I agree.
Right. I think David is used to fighting guys that he can walk through their punches. I just don't think he can walk through Canelo. And him coming forward like that with no real head movement is very dangerous. And fighting a guy like Canelo, he's going to feel the difference. Now, if he's able to take Canelo's punch and impose his will and keep coming forward with activity, then, yeah, he's got a great shot at beating Canelo. But how long is you going to be able to keep that up? I don't see it being very successful. If Canelo's going up and down in weight, that's going to eventually catch up to him. You're going to have to pick a weight class and stay at it, buddy, and gradually move up. Like, you're going to try to drop back down and then go back up, he's going to run into a rude awakening.
That's true.
That is one way to get knocked out.
That's a good point. Yeah. I mean, we've seen it plenty of times.
Yeah, and you'll lose to a lesser guy, and then you'll be like, how did I lose this? Totally winded. Canelo,
yeah, he does got to watch out for that.
Yeah, it's really forced and finesse. Now, this Woodley rematch, I saw enough in the first fight to not even dream of seeing the second one. Now, they're showing it in the strip club. I might show up there to watch it in the strip club.
Right, yeah.
The strip club gets it for free, you know. They invite me to their party.
That's a whole different ballgame.
So,
yeah, if people tell me that it was good, you know, and I see, oh shit, it actually was good. Well, there's Daily Motion, and doesn't mean you got to illegal stream it. It's going to be available after. Then I would. I have to admit, if someone was like, dude, that was a good fight, like, and I saw, you know, credible people, I'd be like, all right, I'll go check it out, 8 rounds, whatever. But yeah, I'm not, you know, I'm not veering towards this one.
Right. And the thing is that this is more, he could do whatever he wants, really, with Woodley. As V first, Woodley's not really a boxer at all. And here he is with a half camp, not even a full one. And he wasn't even getting the rematch until Tommy ended up pulling out. So, because of an injury or whatever. So
it was funny, though. Because Tyson and Tommy said, I could beat this guy one-handed with a messed up elbow and a messed up, you know, broken wrist. He said, I could beat him with basically no hands, you know. And then he got hurt. It's like, oh, I thought you said you could beat him. Wait a second. I thought you said you could beat him with a broken rib. That's where talking shit just kind of gets you in a box sometimes.
Yeah.
But that kind of cracked me up. It's like, no, you said you could come in hurt and beat him. Now you said you don't want to do it. But yeah, it's kind of happening, you know. It's like a year-end fight.
Amanda Serrano getting promoted better with Jake Paul than she ever had with any boxing promoter in her career.
So true.
Sad. That is
I'm
sad.
happy for her, but it's telling. Very happy for her, but it is telling, yeah.
It's extremely telling that a YouTuber can come out and promote a fighter better than
and really promote her, too.
And the promoter.
There's not an interview that goes by. It's not an interview that goes by that he doesn't mention her, you know?
Oh, of course. And I'm like, she never was on social media. Never.
It's true.
You would never see Amanda Serrano on social media, and she's like, I don't do social media. I don't have a phone. I don't do any of this stuff.
Yeah, right.
Like, well, you got to do it now. Because this is where the people are. She's like, but I'm not doing nothing but combing my hair. Good. Tell them you're combing your hair.
Yeah, right.
You know, people would want to see stuff like that. Yep. Like, look, she's combing her hair. So, yeah, that's what she's now got a presence, and they're talking and writing articles about her. So she's seeing the results.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, man. I'm definitely happy for her. So we don't got much time left. Any other items that you want to talk about? It's on a countdown here. We got like 3-4 minutes left of the stream.
Well,
anything else?
I was just saying that this war that's going on right now with PBC has got to step up and start delivering with these fights. They have been milking the world because of this pay-per-view nonsense they've been doing. It is ruining the game. Everybody's doing the pay-per-view shuffle, and it's ruining boxing, and nobody's going to be buying fights, and that's why these numbers are so low, because people are all drained from all these pay-per-view that they're trying to force people to pay to watch. So, and people
right
are
before
going
Christmas,
to
too. Right before Christmas,
and
man,
people
you need
are
money
going to the
for
route
Christmas.
of illegal streaming. People have been illegal streaming now, so it's been crazy out here.
I don't mind 4 to 6. 4 to 6 a year if they're spread out. Okay, I'll live with that, no problem. But when they're back to back every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that's just too much, man. It's too many.
Yeah, it's terrible. You can't keep up. I'm sitting there like, I'm
that's
like,
this
man.
weekend? Oh shit! Yeah, totally, dude. It's tough to keep up.
Yeah, but it messes up the game when you're putting showcase fights on pay-per-view.
Yes.
Because now it's like, okay, you want a marquee fight, and you're basically charging the same price. So I'm like, well, you're charging $80 for this fight, and you're telling me this is worth $80, and then, okay, well, this one's supposed to be worth more. Oh, this $80 too? Then why am I paying $80 for the first one? You know? So
yeah, right. Give me half off. Right.
Right, and the PPV is doing this because they're not spending their money. They don't have the money. So because they don't have the money, they have to do this to generate the money for the fight. So they got to put it on pay-per-view, or there's not going to be any way to guarantee the purse to the fighters. They're getting off the pay-per-view buys. And even though the numbers are terrible, they could do like $100,000. That's enough to pay for everything.
I mean, the break even, a lot of these fights don't take much to break even, and they've been doing that on and off like boxing since the 90s. There's a long list of fights that shouldn't have been on pay-per-view, but do like 175 or 125, or some of them do 200,000. You're right, and it's just like it's a way. Well, also the last few years of this overpay. I mean, to be fair, I remember hearing this about when Al came with the PBC that they were overpaying fighters, but DAZN overpaid a lot of fighters. And that's why you see everybody's minimum went up all of a sudden. It's like, oh, shit. Okay, well, we got to pay them more now. And it's just, like you said, it's literally doing it.
They were playing with hedge fund money.
They don't want to lose them.
Yeah, they were playing with hedge fund money. And right then, this is why all these fighters would have been smart if they'd went and got the money from the zone like Mikey Garcia. Mikey Garcia is like, look,